I just wanted to add that I just wondered if perhaps laying out a timeline to share some of the details to get to where we are now would help, and that would give the community an opportunity to ask questions as well. We've heard a lot of comments over the last meeting. I expect we'll hear more tonight, but maybe based on what we've heard, we can format something to share with the community and add to what people that Jessica has contacted. And I know Danny said he had somebody who lived out of the area. Is there any chance of that person being able to come in? Not at all. I'm sorry? Oh, Missouri. I'm sorry. Okay. I just wondered if there's a different way, if just to also try to lay out where we are today so we can see how we can move forward with the issue. I know there's a lot of legal ramifications, but why not try to lay out where we are, how we can move forward as a community, and not just be at a stalemate at this point. That's all I would suggest. Try to develop a different format so the community can ask questions. We can lay out different agenda inputs, and maybe describe how we can do a better job at communicating these type of issues, listening to the community ahead of time. Maybe we can try to lay something like that out. I think it's worth it, just so that the community has the opportunity. Thank you.
I think the district has provided a timeline under the frequently asked questions. I'm not sure how many in the audience have or in our community have taken the time to read those. They are available if you do the search on the website under FAQ. Lyda, can you pull that up by chance? There's a lot of information on why the decision was made, how it's functioning today. It also lays out the legal ramifications, as Natalie mentioned. I feel like we're at a place in our community where we're really polarized, and that's upsetting to me. I'll just say, on a personal note, my son was at the last meeting for a Boy Scout Communications merit badge. He had to research a controversial topic. Thankfully, he left at 10, but I would urge you, there are also high school students in the back that came of their own volition. Please be mindful in your comments tonight. Thank you.
the next work session in April.
I think when I had spoken with you, I think the board had in charge of the first employees who got together. What he communicated with me was really focusing on having attorneys for both sides of the issue present, and also the state school board, and those are the only discussed that we have. We tried to reach out to some individuals from the Department of Education. I don't think we're going to get the attorney general here, so I don't know if I was I think that even if they, I think right now, I think that there's a time that I think more to speak to this issue. So I just want to see them to today, I think the vision we discussed happening in March, and I think that's a possibility to do so, and we are clear to take the case with compliance with the red and we're going to go with others. And we do have mentioned that this is where we can. So
I'll second. So I know you there. And so I do want to back up a little bit. So the attorneys that I have talked to are going to present their unbiased legal opinion, which is Mr. Thursby with us now, and he did give us his personal opinion on the issue. So that will be what I'm talking about. What he gave his legal position and also to his attorneys had all been said to his personal opinion on the issue. So my attorneys that I've spoken to, they give their interpretation based on what they find in the law. So yeah, and I'm motioning that we continue with the report. Warner Mendenhall is one attorney who is the for-profit attorney. No, Warner, yeah. And the second attorney would be Mr. John Hart. Yes. State school board member would be either Diana Kessler or possibly Kirsten Hill, but Diana Happy, they are both state school board members. Kirsten Hill. So they are under Yes, yeah, they are, so their responsibilities, I kind of printed this off, so in case this came out, that they work on policy development, planning, evaluating functions for public schools, administering the state's educational policy, and set the minimum standards for elementary and secondary schools. And they are also charged with giving leadership and improving education to the general assembly.
Mrs. France, can you tell us where these attorneys are from? Are they Ohio attorneys?
Yes, they are.
And are they practicing school? Are they practicing school attorneys that represent Ohio Public Schools?
I can find out the extent of their experience if you'd like me to send over something to you. I can work on getting that. And also, I did suggest to Dee that we contact our other retained attorney, Mr. Bronston, before. So I don't know if you have not had to do that yet, but if John can speak, or we have someone else we can reach out to. The first thing is you went to the town hall. So we do it like this. The first thing is the form, and we can have one school board attorney. And one in the hall, one hard, mention, or your state one for last name. Makes sense, right?
Yes. Mrs. Mansfield? Mr. Elam?
I did do a couple of things that I thought I'd do about mention confidence. It was important to try to get this done for the break before our next board meeting. So I did do dates of March 29th and March 31st. And asked these people if they would be willing or able to attend. So I know something like this would happen on another. Yes.
Mrs. Donahue? Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
And Mrs. Sebastian?
No.
Okay, on the agenda this evening to provide administrative reports, first are elementary principals Carrie Jones and Cassie Schock.
I'm going to turn this one off just in case. I'm Carrie Jones, elementary principal. At the top of our agenda, we had several upcoming events, including tomorrow evening is our Young Fives informational meeting at 6 o'clock in High School Media Center if any parents are interested. Also keep in mind for K-12, March 18th, this Friday, is the end of the third 9 weeks, and we do have a 2-hour early dismissal this Friday, so keep that in mind. Next week is spring break, not that anybody's counting, of course. And then we have a couple dates in April to be aware of as well where school will not be held. Our next event on there is Camp Kern for 5th grade students on February 16th and 17th. Our fifth graders had the chance to take their annual trip to Camp Kern. And this is a tradition that has been at Bethel since 1984, so our fifth grade teachers were very excited to continue this tradition. The students were able to participate in a living history trail where they experienced firsthand what life would have been like in Ohio in 1810. They also had the possibility of choosing some activities to take part in, such as candle making, climbing wall, tracking, horseback riding, archery, and some team building activities. Our fifth grade teachers wanted to extend their appreciation to all the people that helped this happen, including the community for supporting this trip over the years. And they look forward to continuing that tradition in the coming years. Our next event on there was our readathon, which was held at the elementary building from January 31st through February 15th. We had 399 students that participated. Students read and logged a total of over 48,000 minutes on the readathon website. We had a total donations received of $17,565, and our profit was $13,173. The student prizes arrived last week and have already been distributed to those students that earned prizes. We are using approximately about $3,000 of the earnings will be put toward the new playground at the K-5 building, and the rest of those funds will go into what is called the Principals Fund, which is used to help teachers with anything needed in their classroom for next school year.
Hello, I'm Cassie Schock. I'm the elementary assistant principal. We had Kindness Week at the elementary. It was run by Mrs. Davidson, our social emotional counselor. All classes were given a kindness challenge bingo board with 30 different acts of kindness that they could complete at school. Those activities ranged from doing random acts of kindness for others, writing thank you notes, helping to clean up workspaces, the playground. We're proud to say 20 out of our 36 homeroom classes participated. And each homeroom class received an entry into a popcorn party from Mrs. Davidson for each of the 5 spots that they completed on the bingo board. So she was able to host a popcorn party for the winning homeroom in each grade level, kindergarten through 5th grade. Next up, our first grade had an exciting experience with Mrs. Gatrell. She was able to come into all of the classrooms and share her knowledge on starfish. Our students were able to read about them in their wit and wisdom text, so they were excited to learn from her and to see them actually be dissected. So it was a wonderful experience and a reason that we're thankful that we're in the K-12 building and able to utilize our high school staff at the elementary.
Good evening. I'm Matt Triplett, Bethel Middle School principal. A couple things I want to talk about is the update on the district science fair. It took place this past Saturday at Edison State. All of our middle school students scored superior and did an outstanding job at the state science fair. Those individuals are Sharitha Kutralapati, Caleb Gray, and Lillian Whalen. Congratulations to all our students and Mrs. Gross on their accomplishments as they move on to the state science fair. Next up, 8th grade took a trip to the CTC. Students were able to tour the Miami Valley CTC last week and the programs that they have to offer for students in high school. Thank you to our guidance department for arranging the trip and to the Miami Valley CTC for their continued partnership with Bethel. Third, Power of the Pen. They competed in the regional competition on Saturday, March 3rd. They competed against 26 other schools. Mrs. Seaback, our ELA 7th grade teacher, is the advisor for that. She did not get the scores back yet, but feels like they did very well. Those 7th grade riders included Kate Starry, Natalie Sonnenstein. 8th grade riders were Olivia Steinecke and Evelyn Adams. The state contest is May 12th and 13th at Otterbein University. Next, Bethel Math Pentathlon competition will be held here on Saturday, April 2nd. Division 4, which is grades 6 and 7, will be from 8:30 to 3:45. The national competition will be held in Indianapolis on April 23rd, and this competition is optional for our club members, and those members are Evan Albrecht, Caitlin Brewington, Jonathan Buckholtz, Lucas Buckholtz, Oliver Dick, Andrew Dirks, Lexi Dobmeyer, Will Dobmeyer, Colin Furstenberger, Dylan Gibson, James Hatfield, Caitlin Jefferson, Chloe Kearns, Luca Miller, Brendan Moore, J.J. Swift, and Aiden Woodard. So congratulations to those students and good luck at the competition. Lastly, the Outdoor Adventure Club each month has a activity that they do. This month, 28 Bethel students participated. This month, students they went maple sugaring. Students had the opportunity to see how maple trees are tapped and how to drill into the maple log. They witnessed the tubing that is placed to collect the sap. The OAC, Outdoor Adventure Club, also opened the sugar shack so they could see the tools that were originally used to tap trees and to see how they collected and boiled the sap. Students were also taught how to build a fire and had the chance to build their own fire and light it. So thank you again to the Miami County Parks District for their continued partnership and those monthly activities they have with the students. Are there any questions from the board?
Good evening, Barrett Swope, high school principal. Here in the high school, we've had some exciting things going on. All of our juniors took the ACT test back on March 1st. It was administered in the high school gym by our school counselors. I'm happy to report that the new Wi-Fi access points worked well. We didn't have any issues with that, so thank you to the board for investing in that. And then the National Honor Society sponsored the annual Pennies for Patients fundraiser. Money then is donated to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Our high school students raised over $1,300 to be donated, and Mrs. Schmiel's homeroom won the contest by bringing in the most dollars. This time of year, I also like to run an attendance update. You can see those there on the board. We are not quite back up to where we were before the governor shut us all down back in 2020, but the numbers are going up, especially compared to last year. So we're on the rise there. The athletic department held its first athletic council meeting last week. This was a meeting of varsity coaches, administration, and others. Discussion included expectations of coaches, athletic department policies and procedures, and possible updates to the student athlete handbook. Next, we had 70 Bethel sophomores apply for admission to the Miami Valley CTC. This is a large number over a previous year, 70. Of those 70, the preliminary acceptance, the number was 60. So 60 of the 70 students that applied have preliminarily been accepted, and students and their families will be informed. I just found out today that it's going to be on March 28th, so the day after, the day we come back from spring break. With next week being spring break, they have a counselors meeting out there. Of course, our counselors will not be able to attend because of spring break, and it's at that meeting where they normally get which students have been accepted. So it'll be on March 28th. Two things that aren't on there that I'd like to add. Mr. Triplett talked about the middle school students that participated in the district science fair. We also had three high school students that participated, and they all received superior ratings on their projects. That would be Alex Lyle, Julie Sebastian, and Jewel Tyler. And they move on to the state science fair. And then the second addition is that we would like to announce the valedictorians and salutatorians for this year's senior class, the class of 2020. We have two valedictorians this year, and they are Kylie Balcom and Leah Schaffner. And our salutatorian for this year's senior class is Ayumi Inorme. Any questions from the board?
Congratulations, and will you be getting some social media out for those? Great.
Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
Check.
This one works.
I'm going to, ooh, and I'm on. Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, sir. Okay. Switching gears, sorry. Our technical things are working out. Okay, so important dates of the district. I feel like this one's a little further away from my face, so, okay. Moving ahead. We are at the 14th right now, so tomorrow. Oh, back. I'm so glad he's here. Okay. Wouldn't be able to figure it out on my own. Tomorrow we'll be having the Young Fives informational meeting in the Media Center at 6 o'clock for families who are interested in getting more information about how that's going to work for their students. We have the dessert concerts coming up for the 16th and the 17th at 6 o'clock. Great desserts and great entertainment all at the same time for the elementary and the middle school music programs. Those are fabulous events. I encourage you all to attend. And Friday is the end of the third quarter already. I can't even believe it, but there's a 2-hour early release, so please be aware of that. And then, woohoo, spring break. We're back on the 28th, and then we have the math competitions, as were mentioned, and a work session will be on April 5th. We will have the high school musical, which I know students are working very hard to get ready for on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. It is Cinderella, the Rodgers and Hammerstein version of Cinderella, and it's going to be a fabulous show. Our board meeting will be yet to be determined, board and facilities, which is tentatively maybe the 18th or 19th. We're about to discuss that shortly. Anything else that we're missing that anyone knows of that needs to be added to this list of events? Anything from anybody? No? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Next up. Okay, treasurer's items. I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Hageman, who I believe has a working microphone. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, item A is approval of the Park National Bank Agreement, deposit of public funds. It's a depository agreement we have to have with a bank every 5 years. So asking for your approval to continue that agreement with Park National that we have in place now. Item B is approval of meeting minutes for the February 1st work session, as well as the February 14th regular meeting. Item D is approval of payment of bills. These are all the checks that were ran in the month of December. February. I just skipped back 2 months. February, my apologies. And then item E is approval of the monthly financial report. As you know, your treasurer, me, puts together a budget and some anticipated revenues, which is part of our 5-year forecast. And then each month, as we close the month and try to reconcile our books, this is an updated report based on those numbers. So we're pretty much running pretty close to the estimates as far as what we expect to spend and as far as what we're getting in revenues. We're a little under, on the revenue side, but I think that's a timing issue because we haven't gotten our TIF or property tax revenues. Those are hopefully coming in this week. So, but I think that we're holding steady. But once we get all of those big dollar amounts in, we'll be able to see for sure. On the bank reconciliation, we were able to clear up any prior year issues with the exception of $9.29. So with, my recommendation to the board is, our books have $9.29 more than the bank. So I'm just going to miscellaneous credit that away. The auditors are aware. We just can't seem to locate that. Then on item F is approval of the tax rates set by the Miami County Budget Commission. Need your approval on that. Item G is approval of the farm lease. As you know, we did an RFP, a request for proposals, and we received one proposal back, which was due by February 14th. And so this is the farm lease for your approval with Mr. Benham. Then item H is approval of some transfers. As we discussed at the work session, we have some grants that were used to cover, that were not used to cover the proper expenses when they occurred last year, so we just need to fix that accounting from the Hope Squad and the general fund, and then the 451 to the general fund. Item I, approval of the amended certificate of estimated resource, which is a fancy way of just saying our estimated revenues, and appropriation resolution, which is our budget, our appropriations for the year. Let me see if I can remember all of Ms. Kleppenger's questions. I think it was specifically about student activities, which are your 200 funds that are listed in here, as well as some 300 funds. Typically, those are funds raised by the student organizations. They're not transferred from general fund. So typically, it's fundraisers, dances, things of that nature, where the kids earn those monies and then spend it on, activities that they're interested in. I think that was pretty much the only question about that item, but if I'm wrong. Then we have an item J, which is approval of donations. We had 4 or 5 donations come in since once we were reviewing all the book closings. So we had a donation of $50 from an anonymous source for the elementary principal fund, $500 from an anonymous source for the girls basketball team, $500 from Bo Townsend for the prom committee, and $164 from the athletic boosters to the academic team. So we need your approval to accept those donations. Okay.
They were on our work session, but they're not showing currently on our
Okay.
agenda at the moment. So
Okay.
probably why we have to
Okay. All right. Item K, approval of teacher stipends from Wright State University. So the recommended action is the Bethel Board of Education to approve the enclosed list of teachers owed a stipend from Wright State University for hosting a student teacher. Wright State sends the district a stipend. Typically, it can be anywhere from $50 to $150, depending upon what Wright State and the teacher have agreed upon. There was an ethics ruling that does not allow Wright State or any other college to pay the teacher directly. It has to come to the district, and then the district has to pass that along to the teacher. I noticed that we got a check in February from Wright State, but we hadn't paid anything out. Did some digging, and it doesn't appear like we've passed those on for the last 5 years. So I'm asking the board to make sure we pass those stipends along to the teachers. The amounts are less because we're taking out the employer portion that the board is required to pay. So if you received $50, it might be $43.11, if I remember correctly. So this is going back 5 years to all the stipends that we received from Wright State to make sure that those teachers get paid that money because they're the ones that worked with those students. So I'm asking for your approval on that. Item L, certificate of availability for Happy-O. I'll do my best to explain this. It's recommended that the Bethel Local School District Board of Education approve payment to Happio for an internal communications platform. Apparently, this is an internal communications platform. What that means is it's a way for everyone in the district to communicate with one another instantaneously. It sort of works. Yeah, Justin, Mr. Fertz could probably explain that.
So previous communications director established a communications team that was made up of staff members, both certified and classified, last year. In selecting the communications platform, they worked with our previous treasurer. Mr. Hattery had indicated that because Happio was an overseas company, we couldn't necessarily establish a requisition or a PO until they established a business in the United States. So a requisition was submitted last April. A requisition was put, or a PO was made last July, and then most recently they've set up their appropriate paperwork to establish United States residency, and then therefore that bill that's been budgeted since last April needs to be paid. The district is not moving forward with this platform in the future. This is a one-year deal and we're moving away from it, but we still owe for the services currently.
Thank you. It's my understanding, the invoice that we received is dated 3/1/2020 through 3/1/2021, or 22, 21 to 22. What year am I in? So the purchase order is dated 7/1/2021, which is the beginning of this fiscal year. We can't have services before the PO. That's why there's a certificate of availability I need you to approve, because my authority ends at 3,000, so I can't approve anything. There is nothing in the Ohio Revised Code that says we can't do business with a foreign company. It's frowned upon. They don't like it, but there's no rules against it that I'm aware of, and I did ask someone from the Auditor of State's office just to make sure I hadn't missed anything. So, but I understand, the reluctancy to do that. So because this was for services between 3/1/2021 and 3/30/2022, and the PO is dated in July, I need the board's approval to pay. We have been using the service. It's my understanding we will no longer be using the service. So this is a one-time only expense. And then I think that's all I have.
Okay, borrowing a microphone. So I need a motion to place items from the treasurer's report on the consent calendar, please. Mr. Elam moves. Is there a second? Mrs. Sebastian is a second. Mrs. Hagan, will you please call the roll?
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I missed my cue here. I'd like to motion to pull item, let's see here, it would be 711 off the calendar there, and vote on that separately, please.
I'm sorry, which item, please?
It's the one with Happio.
You want to pull
711, I think. Or on my schedule, maybe it's not the one there.
7L?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, you're okay.
I saw
You're
11,
okay.
7L, yeah.
All good.
I'd like to pull that off and vote separately,
Okay, so
please.
we're pulling 7L off the consent calendar.
Just the one, yeah,
one.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Mrs. Hagan, we're pulling 7L off the consent calendar. Mr. Elam, does your motion still? Okay. So Mr. Elam had moved to place the items on the consent calendar, and it was seconded by Mrs. Sebastian, but with the exception of item 7L. Is that okay? Okay. Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian? Yes. Mr. Elam?
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue? Yes. Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Okay, is there discussion on the other items other than L?
Thank you, Pardon me. Thank you, Mrs. Hageman, for catching the right state payments that were not dispersed correctly over the last few years. I'm sure the teachers are very appreciative of that.
Anything further? I agree with Mr. Elam. I also appreciate your work on the farm lease and getting that sorted out with Mr. Benham and his willingness to continue for the 2-year term that we have on the consent calendar at the moment. The donations that are not showing, always appreciative of those. And that's all I have there. Anything further from anyone else? Okay.
Are we open for discussion on, no? Okay.
No, I'm happy.
Well, okay.
Separate item still. Okay, so now we still have the consent calendar. Now we have a motion to adopt the consent calendar, again, with the exception of item 7L, which is currently still not up for this particular vote. Is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar? Mrs. Donahue moves. Is there a second?
I can second that.
Mrs. Franz seconds the adoption of the consent calendar. Mrs. Hageman, when you're ready, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian? Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue? Mrs. France?
Yes.
Okay, so now we're addressing item 7L. We're looking for a motion, oh, we need discussion first, right? I always forget when we pull off the consent calendar, how we order it.
I spoke with Tina earlier this week regarding, because obviously there's a concern with an almost $13,000 bill. The bottom line is we received the software. We can argue about whether we should have, whether we did or didn't, but we received the software. So her recommendation to me was that we approve this.
For additional discussion,
Yes.
Mrs. Franz, this was your...
Yeah, I just had a couple questions here. Do we know who initially approved this? Because this is before I was on the board, so. And do we have, I guess the other question would be, I've never seen the contract for the work.
Yes, the requisition was put in place last March, I believe, or April. And then once they received their United States residency, it was turned into a PO on July 1, and it was signed off on. So we've had the service since July 1.
Okay, and we're no longer using that service, correct?
It's in play, but we're not moving forward with it in the future, correct?
Okay. And yeah, since I didn't know who approved this, I've not seen the contract. I don't believe I can vote to approve it. It was also my understanding that we did pay out about almost $25,000. We paid for implementing the platform, which seemed very high to me. And so again, there's questions there with that, but I did get some of that answered by Tina earlier today. So thank you for answering those questions, Tina. We can talk about that, I guess, later, but I would have questions about that 25, again, what exactly that included. I was informed that that was for implementing the initial platform, but that seems very high to me, and then to have another almost $13,000 come in now, unexpected. So, yeah, I don't think I can vote to approve that.
I just want to mention one other thing. We had an interim treasurer at the time, and the goal was to pay up with a credit card. Our credit card has a $4,000 max limit. So as Tina's uncovered this, obviously that can't be done. So I'm just giving some of the history. Again, we did receive the services, the software product. That's all I can go on. It doesn't make me happy we're paying $13,000 for it either, but if we receive the product, I think we're obligated to pay it.
Mr. Elam, any comment? Mrs. Donahue, any comment?
Again, I know that this was agreed upon during the last board, but I do believe that the current bills do need to be paid because we did receive the services. However, I think possibly additional investigation can be looked into to see. I just want to make sure that even though we kicked this off, how do we know that it didn't get paid previously? by the communications director, right? I think I heard that that was originally part of the plan.
Yeah, it's just an open bill. It's not been paid. It's sitting there. It's been sitting there since last July.
It's really, okay.
Yeah, we haven't been able to pay the PIT bill until they receive residency
That
in the United
residency.
States.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, so I need a motion on what was item 7L, but is now a standalone item about certificate availability for Happio. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for item L.
Okay, Ms. Sebastian moves on item L. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mr. Elam. Mrs. Hagan, will we call the vote, please?
Microphone. Okay, Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
No.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Okay, the motion for the certificate availability for Happio carries with a vote of 4-1. Thank you. So now we have treasure items for discussion. Mrs. Hageman?
I can't seem to get rid of the microphone, can I? Okay. I emailed the board and wanted to make sure we discussed it in public. April 11th is our April board meeting. I've been asked to participate and speak at the OASBO annual conference, which is the Ohio Association of School Business Officials. Considering I am a local chapter president, I'm also serving on the Auditor of State Committee, as well as the Professional Development Committee. They want us to help out with the different things that are going on at the Columbus Convention Center. So I wanted to ask if it was at all possible to reschedule the April meeting so that I may attend both, because the OASBO conference is from April 9th through April 13th. We weren't sure if it was going to be virtual, if it was going to happen, and so they are doing it in person at the convention center, so would just like some discussion if that's possible.
Certainly. So, discussion. Who has thoughts and feedback? I mean, had you suggested dates? Mrs. Hageman, did you want to go to the following Monday on the 18th, which is Easter Monday, or did you have a suggested date that's alternative?
I didn't have any suggested dates. I didn't expect this to happen, so whenever the board is available. Yeah, the 18th is the next Monday, but...
Does that work for everybody?
Availability for the board?
That works for me.
So Monday, April 18th at 7 o'clock?
And then we'll move our facilities meeting at
Facilities.
6 as well.
Yes.
And Justin, will we keep the core meeting on that previous Wednesday or Monday, or are you going to move that too?
I'll communicate with Peterson and Garmin Miller to see if we can just have them all on the same day. Yep.
Thank you.
I don't believe that requires a vote. Seems like we have pretty good consensus. So, save a little time. Although you have it on the agenda as a vote.
Yeah.
Do you want to vote?
Yes, please.
You would like a vote?
Mhm.
Okay. Is there a motion to move our April 11th, 2022 board meeting to April 18th, 2022 at 7 p.m.? Is there a motion?
I can motion that.
Mrs. Franz makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Mr. Elam makes a second. Mrs. Hageman, will you call the vote, please?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're absolutely welcome. Thank you for all you're doing for your professional organization. Anytime you're shining, we're shining. Mr. Firks, item 9, superintendent's items.
Thank you. On the agenda this evening for consideration are the following items. Letter A, which is a follow-up from one of the agenda questions. This is the second reading for Neola policies, 40.2 in the winter. We extensively reviewed these during our work session. and reviewed each of them one by one. Policy PO 1616 would establish consistent expectations as far as staff dress and grooming, in particular with administrators, to ensure that they show up to work physically clean, neat, groomed, well organized. They dress in a manner that does not cause damage to the district, pride in their appearance, the impact they have on students by the way they dress. That's policy 1616, which is a new one, staff dress and grooming. Policy 2271 has to do with the College Credit Plus program. It requires, by federal and state law, all male students who are of the age of age 18 or older and are classified as a Ohio resident and attending a public college or university under the College Credit Plus program to be registered with the Selective Service System. If they don't do that within 30 days, they potentially could have to reimburse tuition, textbooks, or fees associated with classes that they are enrolled in. Policy 5511, once again, has to do with staff dress and grooming. There are just word changes in here from various such things as his or her to the students, from which to that, etc. It's just language changes within the policy. Policy 5772 has to do with weapons. It clearly defines and updates what the definition of weapon is, and it includes incendiary devices, explosives, and other objects defined as dangerous ordinances under state law. Policy 6010, Mrs. Hageman can talk about that one a little bit. It has to do with grant funds.
Okay, 6110 is on grant funds. I think the only change we had was that there's new language about maintenance effort and maintenance of equity. For requirements of the federal program will be met in accordance with the requirements of the specific funded program. The district shall maintain appropriate documentation and records to substantiate compliance or to justify allowable exceptions, exemptions, or waivers. A maintenance of effort is just we have to promise that we'll spend the same amount of money this year that we spent last year, or or more. They won't let you spend less. So that's a requirement of IDEA or special education. You have to monitor that spend on what you spend on special education costs and maintain that spend for next year and the year after. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. There are exemptions for that. Then there's the ESSER maintenance effort requirement, and that says whatever you spend in total must be spent, and I'm really oversimplifying. But it is just, in essence, saying that whatever we spent last year, we have to spend the same this year or more. We can't spend less. And there are really no exceptions to the ER rule. So this is a required change based on changes to participate in the federal grant program. Same thing on the 6114. This is cost principles for federal grants. Item B, including, so we're just adding language that says, including regarding cost incurred for telecommunications and video surveillance services or equipment. So just adding the additional requirements for getting a quote or additional bids on things and proposals on items that you use with federal funds. Also, all federally funded contracts in excess of $2,000 that's related to construction, such as, has to comply with Davis-Bacon or federal, which is prevailing wage requirements. So those are required additions to our policy. 6325, again, is just the language to say in excess of 2,000, wish it was 20,000, contracts in excess of 2,000 related to construction must be compliant with Davis-Bacon and prevailing wage. And the last is 6423. which is the use of district credit cards. The treasurer, CFO shall be responsible for the initial issuance, reissuance, and cancellation of district credit cards and shall maintain written procedures on all appropriate records and reports regarding the district's credit card accounts. Records and reports will be maintained and made available for review in accordance with this policy and state law. I know your previous treasurer, Mr. Hattery, put together a treasurer's manual, and in that, he outlined some of the credit card items, and I think the board approved it in October 2019, which is a wonderful step, but not required for that. One of the things that he put in there is that people can have the credit card overnight or over the weekend, and I've never done that in any of my districts. So that's something that I'll revisit. But I know that there's been some concern about not being able to get the credit card back to us in the same day. So I'm going to review all that and make sure that we get anything updated to the board. And then it just adds a statement that says all officers and employees are required to immediately report lost or stolen credit cards. So that's pretty much it. I think we're just replacing that language with another item that's in the policy. So I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Perks.
Policy 7217, weapons, piggybacks off of policy 5772, weapons. Once again, it just confirms language in multiple policies. It defines incendiary devices, explosives. It also provides state or federal agents the authorization to carry weapons on campus if it has to do with their scope of duties or weapons in a school safety zone. And then finally, policy 8500 has to do with food services. This is just a couple of wording changes. Previously in the policy, on 2 occasions, it either described individuals as a disabled person or a non-disabled student, and now indicates that they will be referred to as a person with a disability or a student without a disability. That was essentially the only changes within policy 8500. Letter B is approval of classified resignations. We have a couple on here. The first is Chris Keff, custodian, effective February 26th, 2022. Chris served as one of our second shift custodians. He had indicated one of his goals long-term was to become an EMT. He is in the process of taking his certification test and finished his coursework to pursue that career field. And then secondly is Tiffany Pikus, who served this year as a kindergarten aide. Tiffany will continue to serve the district as our softball coach and is looking more for some flexibility in her career and would prefer to be on the substitute teacher list day in and day out. So we thank Chris and Tiffany for their service to Bethel Local Schools. Letter C is approval of Chromebook technology purchase that we reviewed extensively at the work session. And letter D is approval of leave of absence for our high school art teacher Marie Lindsay from March 14th, 2022 to April 18th, 2022. And then finally, we have approval of supplemental positions, fall, winter, sports, and non-sport supplementals. Majority of these are either paid positions at the high school level, middle school level, or volunteers for football. And then you can also see for our new employees to the district, we've also included a copy or an attached document that includes their resumes as well. And then letter F is approval of classified substitute and classified employees. Thankfully, we've had 3 individuals step up and are going to serve the district as a substitute bus driver. We're always in need of much needed bus drivers, so thank you to these 3 individuals. And then we've also been able to secure a replacement for Mr. Keff. On the agenda this evening is Ben Schneider, a second shift custodian. That will be coming in at step 1, $15.47 an hour, which is consistent with our evening salary schedule for custodians, and look forward to having Ben join our team. And then letter G is approval for school year 22-23 internal transfer. Rebecca Fry, who's currently serving as a kindergarten teacher. At our last month's board meeting, we had a presentation, spoke extensively on the Young Fives program. She will be transitioning from kindergarten to that Young Fives program at Masters plus 15, step 17. Those are the items on the agenda this evening for consideration.
I think this is on now. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Firks, very much. So I'm looking for a motion to place the items from the superintendent's report on the consent calendar. Is there a motion? Do you have concerns?
Yeah, I would like to, let me find it here.
Hold that a second.
Yeah, can we move 9C and vote on that separately, please?
Chromebooks?
Yes. And then are we including, I'm sorry, I saw, did you already address item 10A? Mr. Perks?
For the internal transfer of Young Fives, it's under 9 now. It's number 9G.
Oh, that's, okay. Yeah, I did have a question about that.
Okay, so we'll have discussion in a moment unless you're wanting to pull it off the...
Yeah, let's go ahead and pull, please pull the...
You want to pull 9G
Yeah.
as well? Okay, so we're pulling 9C and 9G from the consent calendar. And so Mr. Elam has made a motion for the consent to place items on the consent calendar. But those would be A, B, D, E, F, H. No, not H. A, B, D, E, and F only. Is there a second? No, she wants C and G are being pulled, which is fine. Thank you, Mrs. Franz. Second from Mrs. Donahue for placing A, B, D, E, and F on the consent calendar. Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll for that, please?
Mrs. Sebastian? Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue? Yes. Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Okay, is there discussion on items A, B, D, E, or F?
Item E, James Williams needs fixed to James Williams, and I believe, just so the board members are aware, they're waiting on their per pupil activity permit. They do have their BCI FBI check. That was rather than making a big deal out of it, they will not be allowed to be with kids until those are back, but I just wanted to let you know on those two cases.
The second case being Patrick Wood, correct? So Patrick Wood and James Williams, but otherwise we're good, right? Okay. Any further comment on discussion on A, B, D, E, or F? Mrs. Donahue?
I was just going to say thanks to Tina for explaining the maintenance of equity.
Thank you, Mrs. Hageman, for explaining the maintenance of equity. That was my question for that particular grant fund policy, so I appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you.
And I also am very excited. We have another custodian and some substitute bus drivers. If anybody's interested in being a bus driver or substitute, we still need them. So thank you for those people who have stepped up.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further on A, B, D, E, or F, we're looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar for items A, B, D, E, and F. Mrs. Sebastian has a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
I can second that.
Mrs. Franz seconds. Mrs. Hageman, will you call that vote, please?
Okay. Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Okay, so 5-0, items A, B, D, E, and F are adopted. Okay, so let's look at item C, 9C, the approval of Chromebook and technology purchase. Is there discussion, please? Mrs. Franz, you had asked to have these pulled, so we'll start with you. Okay.
Yeah, I did submit some questions to Jason earlier, so thank you for getting back with me so quickly. I appreciate that. That was helpful. I did have a point I wanted to make. And I just recently learned this. It looks like we purchased about 330 of these last year. And I just wanted to ask about the quantity of 600. Is the total quantity 600 then? It seemed like quite a few since we just purchased over 300 last year. So I wanted to get clarification on that. And the other, let's see. And I was wondering if Jason had indicated, Jason Cook had indicated that so instead of one-to-one quantity, if they're not all doing that, they're not taking them home, could we purchase less and the teachers could possibly get the cart when needed? Is there a possibility of purchasing less since not all the students are going to be, taking them home with them? And also, do we know, I don't think we've had the interest meeting yet for Young 5, so I'm wondering if do we have an idea of how many we're planning to purchase for that program? I don't think we've approved that program yet. Just a lot of questions I have because the quantity seems high to me.
Okay. Mr. Burks, did you want to address any of those questions, like the number of students? We had 30 per class, 6 classes, that was where the 180 plus the 20 you left over. I know we discussed that.
I would have to have Jason answer some of those questions. The 30 students per class times 6 sections is 180, but as far as any of the other rotations, those kind of things, he was the one that kind of led that discussion at our work session meeting.
Sure. And I know, having had pandemic, obviously we needed to have enough for everyone to be able to take one home at some point, and clearly
you're serving
coming out of that. So.
You're serving 1,800 students in the district. Mm-hmm. Every student has access to a device. When those devices have a typical lifespan of 4 to 6 years, you're going to have to go through regular replacements. That's not taking into consideration those devices that may get worn out a little quicker based on how they're handled or cared for by students. So the idea is to eventually have a 4-year rotation, which we're starting now to get on a regular replacement of those devices to make sure that our students have the technology that they need to be successful in class. But as far as the details of the program, I'd have to refer to Mr. Cook.
Thank you. Mr. Perks, by any chance, do you recall what grade levels the 330 Chromebooks were placed last year? It was done about in the April timeframe.
I'd have to look back through the records.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to state grade levels and be incorrect.
Okay.
I don't know exactly who was all replaced last year.
I was wondering if those were instead of this year, actually, was it last year that started the 4-year rotation? That's Jason.
No, he's shaking his head no. So this year is starting the 4-year rotation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
what grade levels are you replacing this year? What grade levels are you replacing this year?
Next year?
Yeah, next year, this year.
K2.
K2.
And then I was going to ask Tina because I don't recall. It said last year was not to exceed $160,000. I don't know, as you were going through your audit, did you come across that to see what was spent last year for those 330 by any chance? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I didn't. I will say that I've talked to Jason a little bit about the lifespan of the Chromebooks, and we're going to probably look at more like 5 years than 4 years, just because, what we're doing is we're using federal funds, the American Reinvestment Act. We have to spend 20% of that $461,000, I think, and some change on instructional materials, in the classroom materials. And, so this was the suggestion, is to make sure we get Chromebooks. I think the 20% for us is $93,000 to $95,000, so this is a little bit more than that. These funds will go away if we don't use them, or go to other districts if we don't use them. I'm just saying, those are the funds that we are going to use, because in talking to Mr. Cook, we were able to use his permanent improvement fund to use that for purchasing 3 buses, because we received that $152,000 state grant, but that's not going to cover the cost of 3 buses, so it's going to cover maybe half of a bus, so we had to meet that obligation, some other way. So we shifted his money that were in his initial budget from permanent improvement, and so that's all I had to say on that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Gina. Sorry.
I would also like to remind the board, we have an IT director and superintendent to take care of the day-to-day details of the district. I think we're focusing on too many of the details, and we need to make a decision and move on.
Anything additional from other members of the board?
Is it possible to postpone a vote on this until we have the Young Fives meeting tomorrow, maybe get a more accurate idea of how many participating families we'll have, and maybe see if we can explore the option with Justin about unless he wants to comment on that now.
If we don't vote on this tonight, the price is going to go up because the price is locked until the end of this month. And it's going to go up if we do not vote on it tonight.
Okay, and how many Young Fives?
I don't know because they won't know until they rerun the quote. But they said that the prices are already going up. Also, the availability on the tablet is going down. So we think the chance to get the tablet.
Right. The meeting tomorrow night, Mr. First, I believe we're finding out, will we have one classroom of 14 to 16 or possibly 2 classrooms of 14 to 16, correct?
Correct. The Young Fives program is a program that we've been looking at for a couple of years now. In fact, we have staff members that have been on site visits. We have former administrators, current administrators that have been on site visits. For a first-year program, we're not quite sure what numbers of interest we're going to get. Some people are a little more hesitant with a first-year program. The idea behind the Young Fives is to kind of bridge that gap between the students that are coming a little less prepared for kindergarten. Maybe they don't have a preschool experience. Maybe socially, emotionally, they're just not quite ready for a full day of schooling, whatever it might be. The idea right off the bat is to have one section offering for Young Fives, and we hope that one section offering is between 14 and 16 kids. The idea is to keep the numbers small so that staffing and potentially an aide could serve those children and give them the support in the educational environment, and also the character-based education environment, teaching them routines, proper social behaviors at school, et cetera, that they need to be successful. So I think Mr. Cook has already built into this quote having enough for the Young Fives program already included. That 14 to 16 kids isn't going to change the order of the current invoice that's on your desk for consideration.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm looking at, it's just it's 117,000, and maybe I could ask Tina if she feels like we have that in the budget. I would feel more comfortable just hearing from her, I think, on that.
Yes, this is going to be part of the federal funds, the ARP.
Yeah, you did.
Right, so we're going to use that to meet our 20% requirement for educational.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any further comment, questions? Okay. Is there a motion to vote on item 9C, approval of Chromebook and technology purchase? Mrs. Sebastian moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Elam has a second. And Mrs. Hagan is ready. As soon as you're ready, Mrs. Hagan, will you please call the vote?
Go back and learn shorthand again. It's been a while. Okay. So, Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
I am going to go ahead and vote yes on this.
Thank you. Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember who I didn't. Oh, Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Thank
So the
you.
approval of Chromebook technology purchase passes with a vote of 5-0. Thank you, everyone. Let's look at item, like that. I don't get many of those, so that's awesome. On item 9G, approval of certified staff for school year 22-23. This is an internal transfer for Rebecca Fry to be the Young Fives teacher for 22-23. Mrs. Franz, you led this off too. Discussion, please.
Yeah, the only question I had with this is I'm a little bit confused because I don't think we voted to approve the Young Fives program yet unless I missed that.
So that's one of those things that's really an administrative decision of how the classrooms are allocated. It'd be kind of like, are you going to have 4 fourth grade classes or 5 fourth grade classes? That's something that Mr. Firks determines on the administration. It's not a board level decision. So.
Okay, yeah, that was not my understanding. So that's why I was confused.
So in addition, as we indicated during our work session, what makes the Young Fives program attractive to a school district is that it's fully funded kindergarten dollars. It's not preschool. Preschool is not compulsory. It's not mandated by the state of Ohio. Therefore, if you would add a preschool program, you typically would get Board of Education approval because that's potential increased costs to the district because you can't fund 100% of preschool. This is essentially a adjusted kindergarten program that's in addition to the current kindergarten program that we have right now. It's not additional cost to the district. It's an internal transfer of an existing staff member that's on our salary schedule to this position.
Okay. So do we need to improve internal transfers? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anytime you have a staff member that transfers internally, you will approve it because you're essentially saying they volunteered or they were interested in approving.
Okay, thanks for the clarification on that.
Sure.
Further discussion? Anyone? Nothing? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the certified staff for school year 22-23 of the internal transfer of Mrs. Fry?
I'll move.
Mr. Elam moves. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mrs. Franz is a second? Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second for approval of certified staff of the internal transfer. Mrs. Hageman, when you're ready, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. That approval of certified staff from the internal transfer passes again with a vote of 5-1. Thank you, everyone. Superintendent discussion, Mr. Firks, do you have anything additional for us this evening?
No, I do not.
No. Man of little words today. Okay, hearing of the BEA president. Mrs. Brewer, what do you have this evening?
This is my teacher voice. I don't have a lot. Things are going great. Spring break is in like 4 days. Not that I'm counting. We are excited about the Young Five program. Kindergarten registration has started. And on the flip side, seniors are working on their research paper. I ordered the diplomas today. Woo-hoo. So you better finish that paper. But yeah, we're looking forward to springtime, spring sports. I know there was a softball scrimmage today. I wore a light jacket today, so things are looking up. We're excited.
Thank you, Mrs. Brewer. Okay, we have a few board items for discussion. Item A is school resource officer through Miami County Sheriff. I think we're just approving a contract. That's exactly right, Mrs. Sebastian. I don't have items up here for like vote type stuff, Mrs. Hageman, but I believe that's what we're doing. So, you ready to take some notes?
This is
my
a
friend?
draft of the contract, isn't it? Right, but it's stamped draft, so I guess that's why we didn't think we were voting on it today.
Oh.
We need if the board Yeah,
Okay.
if we need a clean version, I can certainly get a copy of that, but this one is stamped draft throughout, so.
Okay. We had reviewed the contract.
Okay.
We've all seen it
Right, if you
several
want to
times.
go ahead and vote, we can, and we'll
So-
make sure that we get the correct version.
Well, let's
So
pull the
my
board. Is the
apologies,
board
I
ready to vote on this contract?
I misunderstood.
We've seen it like 3 times, I think. Ms. Franz, Mr. Elam, Ms. Sebastian, Ms. Donahue, does anyone have a problem with voting on this?
Okay.
Okay. Is there a motion to vote on the contract for the school resource officer through Miami County for the contract we have seen in a number of times, even though it's not on here right now? Everybody's okay? Ms. Donahue makes a motion. Mrs. Sebastian makes a second? Thank you. When you're ready, Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
My apologies.
Obviously, that vote for the school resource officer, it passed with a vote of 5-1, and Ms. Hageman and Ms. 5-0. Oh, my gosh, sorry. Thank you. I'm okay. Mr. Ferks, will you please get a clean copy of that contract to Mrs. Hageman for our records and
Yeah.
everything?
Yep.
Thank
I'll
you.
email Captain McGlinch tomorrow and send a copy on to you folks to have it, and also Mrs. Hageman as well.
Correct. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We also, we'll do that shortly. Okay. Thank you so much. Item B, review, discussion, and approval of job descriptions for board members, superintendent, and treasurer. Which one do you guys want to do first? We've had copies of these for a little while, so hopefully this won't be as time-consuming as we think.
Do you want to give some background on the job descriptions?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was a question during the agenda item portion in regards to job descriptions. There was some misconceptions in the district that the district had a lengthy list of job descriptions, which is not true. Essentially, when the district would post a position, they would pull a canned job description off the Dayton Area Consortium or even Google and use that as their own. That can be a little problematic when job descriptions are copyrighted. And so the Board of Education tasked me earlier this school year or even late last year to create job descriptions district-wide. So we've partnered with a company that provides job descriptions for districts and ESCs throughout the state of Ohio. We identified the positions that we have. We also took into consideration with our current growth positions that we may have in the future. And we settled as a board on kind of a range, I believe, of right around 75 job descriptions, knowing that some of those positions will probably come on Bethel's payroll in the future as we continue to grow, and it makes sense to maybe add a position that's provided by the ESC onto our own employee payroll. So, no, Bethel has not had traditional job descriptions, I don't think, ever. And so the purpose of this was to create those so that the district, when we post positions both internally and externally, can attach a job description to it so that folks know exactly what they're going to be doing in that role.
Thank you so much. And that said, as I read through these, they do incorporate a great deal of what would have been on those old ones that we had.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
some of
I
this
don't
is
want to
pretty
say
standard lingo.
I don't want to say our job descriptions were not accurate. We can just say
Right.
that we copyright them, they're Bethel's property, and we can post them on our website and not get in trouble for doing that.
Correct, 100%. So, that said, where do you guys want to start?
Board of Education.
Start with the Board of Education. Okay, thank you, Mr. Elam. We'll go with your suggestion. Sounds great. Okay. Who has suggestions? I mean, there's a chunk. I don't know if this copy has it. Yeah, there. Okay, so whatever we see in red, just for everyone who's viewing, are items that we cannot change. Those are the things we have to retain. So the things that are anything that is in black, we are welcome to change. So, and board members obviously know that. So, thoughts, ideas, suggestions from anyone? Ms. Hageman, you have 5 copies of these, is that correct? That you can make edits on, or you want me to make edits and give them to you later? All righty, that sounds good. No, we're good. I got it. I got you, girl.
I had one, Mrs.
Okay.
Mansfield. Number 6, performs other specific job-related duties as directed, and I would suggest that we put, rather than by the board president, by consensus or committee chairs.
Okay. I think that sounds great. Lord knows I'm not up here telling anybody what to do. By consensus, anyone have any problem with that? Consensus or committee chairs?
I agree with Danny on that.
Mrs. Sebastian, okay with you? Okay. Awesome. Any further, Mr. Elam, on board member?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mrs. Franz, do you have any changes for board member? We're just going to go down the table. I think that's just going to be
Sorry,
more
what was that?
sufficient. Any further changes on board member job description from you?
No, I think that was it.
Okay. Mrs. Sebastian, do you have any changes for board member? Mrs. Donahue? Okay. Personally, I hate when you say advanced notice. I just think that's wrong. So I would just like the advance notice. Take the D off the end. And then that's just a pet peeve of mine. And then my other pet peeve is one, I know it's in red, but I thought we could ask. Can we say pursues high quality results? Because I think quality is very vague unless it's high quality, poor quality, low quality. What kind of quality are we talking about? So will they accept an addition?
Could always ask.
We can ask, right? It's a pet peeve. It's just one of those things from back in my corporate communications days. So I apologize. It's just the training you have, right? And other than that, I'm quite pleased. Unless we need to change the copyright date at the bottom, but that's really super nitpicky. Okay. No one has anything further for board member? Can we move on to the next one? Anything further? Good? All right. Superintendent then, Mr. Elam, are we going in order?
I'm good.
I'm going to let you guide this vote. Okay. Starting at the end of the table, Mrs. Franz, are you ready to go first? Is that okay? I'm just starting to my right and working my way left. Nothing there?
She has none. I have none.
You have none? Okay. Mrs. Sebastian?
I have one. I just want to add the superintendent works directly, collaborates with the treasurer to make decisions that are in the best financial interest of the district or within the framework of the finances of the district.
Do you care where that gets put in? Okay. And can you email me that language? Does everyone agree and understand that language? Can you say it one more time? Can you say it one more time?
Yeah, I'm not a wordsmith. I was hoping somebody else could wordsmith it. I'm a math person, so the superintendent works directly and collaborates with the treasurer to make decisions that are in the best financial interest of the district and works within the framework of the finances of the district.
Okay. If you'll send me that language, I'll figure out where we can put that in there if everyone's okay with it. Does anyone have any problem with that? Mrs. Franz? Mr. Elam's shaking his head no. Mrs. Donahue? Nothing else? Are you okay with the change Mrs. Sebastian suggests? Okay. I'm going to continue with my insert high for high quality because that's what I do. And I'm just double checking that I didn't have any further. Nope. Nothing further. I'm okay with that one. Okay. All right. Treasurer, CFO. Got a lot of things to change here. Do we like the title Treasurer, CFO? I like it. Everybody else like it? Hey, it's in black. We can change it. Okay. Ms. Sebastian?
Yeah, I had added one, and it's in yellow if you looked at the agenda. Manages and monitors all levies and income tax revenues, including but not limited to obtaining board approvals, filing all required documentation with local, state, and/or federal entities. And by the way, Tina wordsmithed that one for me. That was not my words. I just said, hey, there needs to be something in here about levies. She did all that great work.
Okay, and that is, the audience can see, it is in yellow up here now. Okay. Mrs. Franz, anything for treasurer? No. Mr. Elam, no?
No.
Okay. You know me and my high quality. Mrs. Donahue, nothing else from you? Okay. I wanted to ask Mrs. Hageman very, very briefly on this one. They talk about certifies Ohio Department of Education financial reports. Do we need to add anything about county, how they have us do the county tax budgets and things like that?
I thought there was a section in there that said that
all reports that you can certainly.
Okay. So I'll peruse and double check that.
Certainly add that if you like.
Since I know we're in that special condition where we're one of those schools that has the county tax budget in Miami County, so I didn't know if that was a thing we needed to do. So I'll double check and make sure I didn't just miss it.
Okay.
Which is totally possible with all these.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Any further questions from anyone else or comments, feedback? All righty. Was this a vote item? Yes, it is. Okay. So we made a few changes, none incredibly overly substantial, but I have notes of them all, and I will get those to Mrs. Hageman. Are we prepared to vote? Anyone? Do I have a motion to approve with these minor changes that we're going to make? The job descriptions for board member, superintendent, and treasurer.
Make a motion.
Mrs. Franz makes a motion. Is there a second? Mrs. Donahue makes a second. Mrs. Hageman, when you're ready, will you please call a vote on the job descriptions per the changes I'll submit to you shortly?
Mrs. Sebastian? Yes. Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. France?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That passes. The job descriptions are approved with a vote of 5-0. Thank you all. Okay. Shuffling again. Okay. Mrs. Sebastian, you had something regarding the treasurer.
Mrs. Hageman, would you stand, please? Congratulations to Bethel Treasurer Tina Hageman for her work with financial reporting. In February 2022, the district she served previously received the Auditor of State Award with distinction. Historically, less than 4% of districts receive the Auditor of State Award with distinction. According to Auditor Keith Faber, this award recognizes the hard work of fiscal offices to keep clean, accurate records. Their efforts go a long way toward making Ohio more efficient, effective, and transparent. As she mentioned previously, Tina Hageman also serves as president of the local Miami Valley chapter of OASBO, Association of Ohio School Business Officials, and serves on professional development and auditor of state committees. Congratulations, Tina. Okay, now I'm putting on my facility committee meeting hat. We met tonight at 6. The basic summary is that right now we have approximately $800,000 available to spend. There were 3 projects the facilities committee agreed to pursue and recommend to the board, and I'm going to make a motion for those right now. It's item 2.6, finish interior for Unit B, the slab underground, which is concrete. Finish 2.6, finished interior for Unit B, walls and finishes. Those 2 projects are the 5th grade wing. The third item is VE2, interactive projectors, including all interactive projectors in the elementary. Tina's going to hopefully find funds for those with some of the federal funds. The funds, I won't give you the exact total. I know the interactive projectors are $134,000, and I think the other project was around $600,000, give or take. So, and then the other update is we decided as a group, there's a $20,000 mod to change the gym floor to wood. We decided not to do that at this time and to leave it the flexible surface. Is there anything else I missed, Justin or Natalie? Jessica? Okay, so did I make that motion? I kind of got wordy. So I make a motion that we accept those 3 projects, basically finishing the kindergarten wing and the interactive projectors.
Just for clarification's sake, that $800,000 is what we currently have. Just want to make sure we're clear on that.
So the motion at the moment is that from the facilities committee is that the priority be placed on finishing the 5th grade wing and the interactive monitors. Is that correct?
That is correct. The priorities.
So Mrs. Sebastian has made the motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Elam is the second. Okay. Mrs. Hageman, will you please call a vote when you have a moment?
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. France?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0 that those are our priorities in the building. And I think Mrs. Sebastian has one more.
Yeah, just to clarify what Justin said, because I probably got right now with the project budget, there's $1.4 million left in the budget, but we still have concerns about rock under the surface that we may have to do and other contingencies. So of the $1.4 million, that's the $800,000 the construction manager felt we would have to give. There was something else.
It's okay. Thank you, Ms. Sebastian. Okay. Anything further from board members for board items for discussion? Anything? Ms. Donahue, anything? Okay. Okay. Now the moment you've all been waiting for. Hearing of the public. Just a minute to regroup. So, I know we've gone through this recently, but briefly we'll go through the rules again for participation at board meetings. I have to think about 27 slips have been submitted. I'm going to skip to the rules. So these are the following rules. So anyone having a legitimate interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public portion of a meeting. Attendees must register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 5 minutes duration unless extended by the presiding officer. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. The presiding officer may prohibit public comments that are frivolous, repetitive, and/or harassing, interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, abusive, off-topic, obscene, or irrelevant, request any individual to leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum or is disruptive to the conduct of the meeting, request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person when that person's conduct interferes with the orderly progress of a meeting, call for a recess or adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action, waive these rules with the approval of the board when necessary for the protection of privacy or the administration of the board's business. Portion of the meeting during which participation of the public is invited shall be limited to 1 hour unless extended by a vote of the board. But, you know, we don't need all that because we're all going to be good people of decorum and it's going to be awesome. Okay? So, moving to the slips. Up first on the list is Maury. Is it Wyckoff or Wyckoff? Wyckoff. Thank you, Mr. Wyckoff. Thank you.
I'm a resident of Troy. I'm a resident of my aunt and I've lived here for over 40 years. I've raised 5 kids and 7 grandkids. And I just want to speak on behalf of trans individuals. There are some in my family, and I would say they are all dedicated, loving people, and it's a natural choice that something that people figure out when they're trying to figure out who they are, transitioning from a child to an adult. As many of us do, many of us stay the way we are in terms of gender, but some people find that that's not right for them. And I don't think it's a way to be evasive or to be perverted or anything like that. It's a way that people figure out what's right in their life, and I appreciate the support that you would give to the trans community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wyckoff. When you do, will you put them where I can see who their name was? Thank you, Mr. Wyckoff. Okay. I forgot to mention Mr. Elam is our timekeeper, and he'll let us know if someone's running out of time. And he'll hold up fingers to let you know when you have like 2 minutes left or 1 minute left. I think we have signs. So if you're curious about remaining time and you see a sign go up, you'll know. Thank you for doing that, Mr. Elam. I appreciate it. Next is Tobias and Patrick Smallwood. As long as you're on one slip, so it has to be a combined 5 minutes, but yes.
thank you for the chance to speak about myself and my community. I am a student at currently still Bethel High School, and but I don't think that's correct. I'm a student, trans student, by long-term work. I'm a kid. I'm 17% of this country. I'm hardworking, loyal, encouraging. Admittedly, I'm only working that week for past that time. That's not perfect. But also don't think that or possible to show you the past benefits. But that is not one. That's part of it. When I went out to school, I told you to go to that. It's so easy and too much of it. At the end of freshman year, I did not go to school. Since then, they made a few accommodations that are trying to do environmental projects. So we're in the environmental program. We think that was the accommodation even though our however, that was not. Not because teachers did not allow it, but because of the procedure. I was afraid that every time I was go to that room, I would have to make sure. Whether I would have to make sure to do the prayer or to ostracize. But the teacher that's something wrong. No one should be afraid to go to that. Please no grade. Regardless of your grade, nothing is free to go that. Yet, as a fear that a lot of parents have, we make them out to be victims. We make them out to be monsters, to fall. But they don't do it. And I'm not going to want to hurt you. I mean, we have to. And people are just trying to say how much need to get to be around. And so I keep mentioning, we have, I've gone to really good. And honestly, it gets fascinating. If you want to be someone, they're not going to be. If you're down to it, it's just completely different. It's humanity. It's a chance to be yourself. Salary yourself, free. And that's not something a lot of people understand. That happens to be so much to this one person. And in all honesty, I just rested how excited to go out with you. And I'm not sorry that I did. I'm not sorry that one time when I went to the restroom, there were boys in there. I'm not sorry that nothing happened. A lot of people that or they think something happened. I'm not sorry that I had to trust through at school.
I've been a father, husband, clinic systems engineer for 20 years, small business owner twice over here in the city. Here's my son, here's his grandfather. Okay, quick. So I've heard a lot of discussion in previous town halls, and I just want to jump right to the meat and the bones of it. I hope, based on the discussion tonight, that the future community town hall will extend invitations to GLAD and the land of lawyers, the two amicus briefs that were filed in the case of Adams versus School Board of St. Johns County, number 18-13592, that is the binding opinion and case law that is currently being discussed in our community council. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Tobias and Patrick Smallwood. Up next is James Knapp. Looks like the pen was running out. Sorry if I got that wrong, Mr. Knapp.
Chair to the board, my name is James Knapp, and I am Chair of Trans Ohio, which is Ohio's first and largest transgender organization. I know you previously had some contentious comments in the public comment period about transgender rights here at Bethel High School, and I'd like to sincerely take this time to thank you for listening to all that. I know it was hard to listen to. Madam Chair, I'd like to offer Trans Ohio and myself as a resource to those of you who still have questions about how to best support your transgender students or what it is to be transgender. In addition to nearly a decade of volunteer service to Trans Ohio, I am also an attorney and I have experience drafting and reviewing policy. I'm happy to help any school system in Ohio along the way. I'm here tonight specifically because Trans Ohio is contacted by 2 different parents of transgender adolescents who currently attend Bethel High School, and they want their children to continue to be supported here at school. It's important to remember that regardless of personal ideology or opinion, that schools have a duty to protect its students from harm, including harassment. Guidance under Title IX is clear, as is case law in Ohio. Trans students have the same rights to use the appropriate sex-segregated facilities as their cisgender or non-trans peers. I'd also like to remind you all that despite what those in opposition may believe, this is not a case about strange adult men walking off the street into the bathroom to use the restroom and toilets next to 5-year-old girls. That's simply not true. What we're talking about here is adolescents of the same age using restrooms and changing facilities while at school and during the gym period and afterwards during sporting events. Bethel has a long history of supporting trans students in the past and has had an inclusive policy for years now, regardless of current rulings. I'd like to thank you for standing up for your transgender students and urge you to continue to do so, because there's more students affected by these meetings and this policy than you realize. There's more students at Bethel that are out right now, and they're watching us. What's said in this room will impact them not just now, but in the future. The Transgender Day of Visibility is March 31st. What a wonderful message it would be if Bethel High School sent out an unambiguous message of support to trans students by not changing policies that are working. Thank you. I feel good.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Holly Batten.
Good evening, Board of Education members. I'm here to represent the estimated average of 14% students that attend Bethel who receive special education services. As a district, we have made some improvements in special education services over the years. When our kids first started attending Bethel about 8 years ago, we were told by some administrators Bethel ships kids like that off. And that, the person them, was my kid, as they pointed at my kid. Bethel knew my daughter was coming to school that school year before the school year started, yet continued to put her on the higher level floor of the elementary. What that meant for my family was that my husband or myself had to carry her on our back up the stairs. I don't know how many fifth grade students like to be carried by their mom or dad up the stairs, not mine. The solution proposed was just to keep her in an IEP room all day. In case you are not aware, that is illegal and also not in the best interest of our daughter or her peers. Inclusion was all she knew. She needed her peers and they needed her. Ask her classmates. They love her and she loves them. We have many here fighting over bathrooms. I won't even go into detail about the horrible bathroom accommodations that have been made for our daughter. In a closet bathroom with no lighting, laying her on a hard elementary school desk with her arms and legs hanging over the edges. Thankfully, Ms. Diedrich listened when I cried in her office and sobbed, and it was improved in middle school. My daughter has always needed to use the staff bathroom or the nurse's office bathroom. I am thankful for a soft place to lay her for medical care. It's not something I take for granted. If you are questioning the 14% statistic I gave you, ask yourself, why is that? Is there something I don't know? I listen to most all board meetings, or I attend in person. You may not be aware of that. I have heard several times the district say, we don't have room for special education kids, so we need to send them to other districts. I am excited about the early five program, as early intervention is incredibly critical. But I guess I'm wondering, and I think a lot of special ed parents are wondering, why is there room for students that we don't really have responsibility for, but there aren't room for special needs kids in our district?
Why are we shipping kids with Down syndrome and autism to other districts? Why don't we have room for IEP preschool kids, yet we're adding kids to our district that we're not even responsible for? Preschool IEP kids are our district's responsibility already. I have heard it said in board meetings it's because we don't have resources at Bethel. So we send them where the resources are. That sounds like a really great answer. Unfortunately, the truth is, Bethel has chosen not to have those resources. Funding is not given for special education. Teachers do not have the supplies they need or the resources they need to adapt and modify things for students. There also aren't training so that they know how to diversify education. If I can make interventions in my home to help my kids, there's no reason Bethel can't also. I encourage you to ask any of the students to shift off, quote unquote, how often administration or staff has checked on them from Bethel. Often Bethel isn't even attending the IEP meetings or the meetings with the students. It's really heartbreaking. How is that a valuable education? Do they not matter? If they do attend, they have minimal knowledge of the students. How is that protecting our most vulnerable? When Bethel was a school of 600 or 900 in a building that was inaccessible, it's slightly understandable. But now we have 1,800 students in our district, and we are building a building that is one floor. Bethel can no longer use the illegal excuse that the building is inaccessible anymore. They can no longer use the excuse we are a small district. According to federal law, IDEA, also known as Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, there is something called the least restrictive environment. Let me educate you if you don't know. LRE means that to the maximum extent possible, school districts must educate students with disabilities in a regular classroom with appropriate aids and support alongside non-disabled peers in their school they would attend if they did not have a disability. Basically, we have been breaking the law for a really long time. We have to make changes now. This is not a new law. It was enacted in 1994. It has since had 2 revisions. I'm asking you to research the following, each individual board member. Faith. I know a lot of teachers are scared of that word, but it's not scary at all. It actually protects some of our most vulnerable. LRE, IDEA 2004, do your own research. Create a special needs council that directly works with the board to collaborate. The council, along with administration, teachers, both special ed and regular, and parent representatives, to develop a plan to meet the needs of all students.
That's your time, Mrs. Patton. I'm sorry, that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nell C. Swanson.
I'm Chris Swanson, a Bethel graduate, class of 1968. My remarks are on 2 topics. 1, this microphone and freedom of speech, and 2, the concept of courage. The board's February 14th meeting was well attended, featuring a majority of citizen testimony staunchly opposed to the board's proposed resolution. Everyone present at that meeting was able to see and hear everything that transpired. I have family members who were unable to attend that meeting, as well as this meeting tonight. They watched that February 14th meeting online, and they complained that while the board's microphones worked well, and their speech was at a volume easily comprehended, the microphone used by the public was at a volume about 1/10 as loud. Adjusting their computer settings, sound system, match the volume to 100% still required pressing their ear against the speaker in order to fairly hear each citizen's remarks. Is it possible that after allocating some $20 million for improving Bethel schools, funds were not available to purchase a quality microphone? Freedom of speech matters little if the Bethel Township public, not present here this time, cannot hear online.
My immediate family strongly supports the U.S. Constitution and has had 6 members serve in the U.S. Armed Forces. That Constitution, to which we all took an oath, guarantees in Article 1, read in part, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech. What does abridging mean? It means to abbreviate or shorten. Could it be successfully argued that giving the citizens gathered here a faulty microphone is a violation and does abridge our freedom of speech? Congratulations and kudos to whoever fixed this microphone stand. Has the volume control been fixed as well? I'll check this out, and if the online tape record of this meeting is still of poor quality, I'll be back. On the topic of courage, it takes courage to do what is right, regardless of the consequences. Now, courage is the quality of mind and spirit which enables us to meet dangers, opposition, or challenges of life with fearlessness, calmness, and firmness. My concern is not merely expressed by my opposition to the aforementioned resolution. This is only the beginning. Soon, any trans or other identifying person will be participating in girls' sports. The school will be teaching critical race theory, and eventually this will all end with the imposition of all aspects of this education given over to Marxist theory. And if my time permits, a rhetorical question: does the board recognize that the last meeting did not have an Admiralty flag? As a free-born, living, breathing human being, and now a member of the International Common Law Court, I have pledged my oath only to the American flag. You'll see the American flag in the hallway. Did you bring this one because you don't know the difference, or because you do?
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Next up is Michael Note.
It is a pleasure to be here to speak to you. And a couple things. First of all, it was the most interesting meeting I've ever attended. A couple things I would like to say. I apologize to everyone that said horrible things to you in the last meeting, even though no one else would say that to you. Damning you all to hell was quite an experience, considering I don't know how you all believe, but I know that as society is very diverse. That is well. I'm sort of, I don't know if you really want the microphones to be working completely last time, because it was really shown how much hate there really was by people that weren't from here. So I researched almost everyone that spoke. Most people weren't from here that were speaking. It was not a lot of local people. There are some people that do have written statements that they pulled offline. Also for the meeting or proposed meeting, some of the names that were mentioned, I Googled them while I was sitting over there. I suggest you do the same. There's a long list of newsworthy stories about those individuals and their lack of impartiality. A lot of questionable things. Something else that I also experienced, a lot of people were saying that they moved to this community because they thought this was a safe haven for them. You know, they were concerned about this and that. But if you really look back at history, there was a really famous video that went around in the 60s and 70s. Actually, it was probably more like the 50s. It was just black and white. And they sounded just like them. As far as, you know, the community's changing. Why did we move here? It's just horrible that someone that doesn't look like us is here in this community. It's crazy. A couple other things.
First of all, I spoke with a lot of you, and all of you, no matter your standpoint, were kind. I understand that you have different backgrounds, you have different faiths, and some of you even said that you had family members that were part of this community, as part of the LGBT community. I'm not going to out you because there's no reason to. But just because you have family doesn't mean that you can vote against one part of the community and support your family secretly. Also, for the people that are here that are speaking, thank you for speaking for some of us, because as far as it goes, something else that was said in the last meeting was the majority rules, and that's really not the case. It may help you as far as an election, but we also fight for the people that need that support. When a lot of laws, a lot of people, a lot of faith that are sort of there aren't speaking. So I would say that no matter how this goes, no matter the love, the hate, everything that's here, it is your legacy. And I know you're talking about lawyers, I know you're talking about going to court. It's going to be expensive one way or another. But at the same time, I think of the kids. I know some of you are fighting for these kids, some of you are fighting for those kids. But it's amazing the perversion of mentalness when it comes to what kids are doing in bathrooms. It's amazing the imagination that I've heard in this audience, because I've never even imagined that in my life. But there were people that resigned, there were people that left, even this district. But we don't talk about them as much as we talk about what could be, but what isn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Note. Is it Malachi Carroll? Mel Carroll? Is there a Mel Carroll? Okay. Mr. Cook, are you up there? Okay. Well, we'll see how the speaker microphone works out, if we can loan one from up here. That does work. This one died. I don't know what we're going to do. The microphones tonight are killing me. Next up, we have Martin Nichols.
Test.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you for them as a local. I really am happy and thank you. I'm kind of I'll make my very brief. I'm going to speak from a book that has been in our country for a long time. So that's all I'm going to do with no commentary. Genesis 1:26-28. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish and the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, over every living thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. The image of God he created him, male and female. He created them. And God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, over every living thing that moves on the earth." Isaiah 45:9. Woe to him who strives with him who formed him, a pot among earthen pots. Does the clay say to him who formed it, "What are you making?" Or your work has no handle? Proverbs 26:6. train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart. Matthew 23:15. Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites, for you travel across sea and land to make a single proselyte. And when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of heaven as yourself. The word of God, our readers.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. A. Melinda, is it Gleff or Glet? I can't read it, I'm sorry. Is it Gleff? Glet? Okay, thank you.
Hello. I am actually I went to the high school. I graduated in 2004. I would like to applaud the board for trying to make the restroom policies in school inclusive and including a lot more people. Because when you make restrooms exclusive and don't include everybody, you create a society, particularly a school, that's not easy to single out.
I apologize. I think Mr. Cook's trying to make some corrections on our sound system, and it's obviously causing an issue. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, it makes it easy to single out and to bully students. And I think that is very important that a school try to find a policy that does not make it easy for students to be bullied as part of the policy. Because ultimately, you want the students to learn to include everybody and to learn to love them. Because ultimately, they have to fit into each other eventually. And I'd like to thank the board for trying to make that possible. So please make sure that it's part of your effort to make the community, to bring the community together on this issue so that everyone can feel like they're at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda Glut. Okay. Is it Molnar? Sorry, if you can just clarify, is it Molnar? Thank you.
Familial rejection is one of the number one reasons why youth homeless LGBT something to sit with. Do all of the trans students have spoken today?
Yep.
Yeah, on my time.
Sorry, everybody. We're really trying very hard to get this right. I apologize. No, at least you're getting feedback. I'm not getting anything. cold though. You cold?
Yeah, but I got a sweater on. Oh, you get the cold? Well, I could change it though.
I'm so sorry, but I appreciate everyone's patience. Thank you so much.
Test, test.
I think the batteries have been Jason.
I don't even get a signal. I don't even get a signal on my phone. So if anyone's trying to tell me the phone's not working, they're not going to get it. Lori's getting texts where people say that they can't hear anything online, and they're trying to tell me it's not coming through. So.
He's gonna unmute it.
We need to do like a
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Okay, check, check. All right, I think it's my turn to talk still. So, yeah, so anyways, I'm a therapist at a youth homeless shelter.
Yeah.
So, for the trans students who are in the audience and who attend this school, I just want to say I support you and I'm here for you. And I'm really glad that you exist, and especially Tobias. I was moved to tears by what you had to say, and your lives matter and you're important, as well as, you know, the intersection of children with disabilities, you know. So GLSEN has released a lot of studies related to inclusion policies and how they proportionately impact straight men. So when we have more inclusion, proportionately, straight men experience less bullying. So I encourage you to look that up. They've released a lot of studies about inclusion in schools and how bullying, targeting, you know, especially transphobic and homophobic bullying is proportionally directed at straight boys. So to those on the board who recognize that Title IX is an actual law, thank you for your logic and reason. And for folks in the room that are still struggling to make sense of this, I really invite you to challenge your fixation on children's genitals.
Again, you need to make comments directly to the chair.
That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Molnar. Next up is Dr. Ray Debussy? Sorry, I know I'm butchering your name. I apologize. Not doing great with the names tonight. I'm sorry.
No, you're totally fine. So I wanted to kind of offer like a different perspective, and one that I hope is actually useful for the board in a different way. So I am someone who works in higher education, and I am also someone who, in addition to their work that they do in higher education, is also certified to do Title IX and civil rights investigations. And so I've received training by the state of Ohio, as well as the institution that I serve at the pleasure of. And so I think that I might have an interesting perspective just in terms of what the law says, but also things that you might want to be sort of familiar with as you're considering access for gender diverse youth in terms of bathrooms, locker rooms, etc. So in terms of the ability for trans people, and particularly trans students, to use restrooms, locker rooms, etc., that align with their gender identity, that's been something that the U.S. Department of Education actually authorized back in 2014. And so at the time specifically, the Department of Education said Title IX's sex discrimination prohibition extends to claims of discrimination based on gender identity or failure to conform to stereotypical notions of masculinity or femininity, and the Office for Civil Rights accepts such complaints for investigation. Similarly, the actual or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity of the parties does not change a school's obligations. So that is something that was affirmed by the U.S. Department of Education back in 2014, and probably most of us are very familiar with the Obama administration's actions in 2016, where they issued a Dear Colleague letter affirming the right of trans individuals to use sex-segregated facilities as well. As someone has already mentioned here this evening, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which governs here in Ohio, has also affirmed that ability for trans students to use those sex-segregated facilities. And I would also like to remind folks that the Trump administration actually said specifically, quote, all schools must ensure that all students, including LGBT students, are able to learn and thrive in a safe environment. Similarly, as with the Obama administration and with the Trump administration's specific quote in that instance, the Biden-era Department of Education has also confirmed that Title IX protects trans students, and they recently issued a notice of interpretation less than a year ago specifically clarifying that, and the Department of Justice has also affirmed that, specifically citing the Supreme Court's case in Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia, which affirmed the rights of LGBTQ+ people in the workplace. But ultimately, what I hope that y'all will also consider, and I'm going to be very careful not to make this hurt anyone's ears, very careful. But what I would also like to remind folks is that when we're debating the rights of trans students to use something as simple as a bathroom, something everyone has to use, everybody uses, that is something that does negatively impact the mental health of trans students. And we know the impact that that has. We know that that causes higher rates of anxiety, higher rates of depression, higher rates of suicidal ideation. But we also know that it causes students to have more absences at schools. We know that it lowers their participation in extracurricular activities. We also know that it lowers their GPAs. We know that it reduces their educational aspirations, so their intent to actually attend like community college, trade school, etc. And frankly, there are kind of more pressing issues facing today's children. As someone who works in higher education, I have seen that difference from pre-pandemic to now. I mean, the number of things like being concerned about face-to-face learning, how to make sure that kids can still do that, and the importance of face-to-face learning, how to make sure that folks are understanding the variety of social skills that come with just in-person interactions. That is something that I see today's college students in the past 2 years really struggling with. And ultimately, letting kids be kids is also equally just as important. And I would hope that, y'all really consider the fact that this has been long-standing since 2014, and that I hope that my perspective can be helpful in you all's conversations that you'll have. And I kind of want to go back to something at the very beginning of this meeting, like several hours ago, right? With the elementary school and Kindness Week, won't we all just be kind? I think that's a good message, right? And maybe one that we should all consider. Thank you so much. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Dr. Debussy. Amy Morrow? There you are.
Hello, thank you again. My name is Amy Morrow, and I am the founder of Medical Freedom Fighters of Darke County. And I actually came here from Darke County because I realized that all schools in Ohio is looking at Bethel for the choice that will be made. And so I stand here because I believe we need to go with what the majority want. Today, the parents are here as a majority saying no. They are saying that we need to stand for righteousness and do the right thing. And let me remind you that those of you that are here on the board, that your seats are not secure, that you can lose your seat for not upholding what the people want, what the parents want. And you know, the word Bethel means holy place. It means a place of dedication, and I believe that God wants to do a work here. And you know, we need to love. As Christians, we need to love. And having that said, but we need to do the right thing and stand for righteousness and stand with the majority of the parents and protect the children and secure the children. It's about them. It's not about, you know, keeping them separated or bringing them, you know, about bathrooms, but it's to do the right thing and to do what the parents want and the majority of what the parents want, and to stand for righteousness and to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrow. Jeff, is it Morford?
Good evening. How are you doing? I see there's much bigger issues that you have on the floor tonight than the issue I bring to the floor. I appreciate everybody's strength on this and the strength it's going to take to handle it. My issue is not this, and I apologize if I'm wasting your time. New issue, just for a second.
You're fine, Mr. Morford. Please just direct your comments this way, and we're good.
I'm involved in a annexation over in New Carlisle kind of thing, and I'm just here to tell you, I'd like to think everybody knows about it, but if not, I just want to let you know there's going to be a lot more students coming here from the New Carlisle area. The piece of property I'm looking at, there might be 300 houses, which I'm adjacent to, and those students are coming here, the buses are coming here, the traffic's coming here for construction over the next 2 to 5 years, let us say. I think there's a big annexation coming into Huber Heights that will bring more students into this district. I'm not sure about that one. I'm only sure about the ones my neighbor. It's going to take, you know, it's a two-bladed sword, I'm sure. I mean, the more students come here, the more tax dollars you get, and you can put up new lights or something. I don't even have the concept of what it takes to run a school. But I do know that more students here, there's been issues of classroom sizes or, you know, in a trailer. You know, I don't even know these things. You know, I'm sort of 70 years old and I'm past this. My kids are gone, you know. But anyway, good luck. You know, God bless you all. This is a tough one. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. Some might think I'm wasting your time about this, but there's more students coming to this school. And there's a lot, you know, I look at even New Carlisle just for numbers. He hasn't asked me to leave yet. There's only like 2,500. What does that say? I can't see that good or hear that good.
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
There's like 2,500 homes in New Carlisle, 5,000 residents. It's going to grow like by 35 to 38%. I don't know if New Carlisle is ready for it. I don't know if you're ready for it. It's just crazy. I guess I'm just too old to look at progress, you know, at what price, you know. People are worried about busing, they're worried about traffic, they're worried about school, obviously. Me personally, I'm worried about the habitat over there. I'm worried about the environmental impact on my property. And again, you deal with it. You deal with the government, and no one. I've contacted 30 different offices, as some of my neighbors have, and no one's got the answer. That's not my job. That's somebody else's job. I'm not responsible. And then 3 years from now, when if a mistake has been made, well, that guy's out of office. He made that decision. He's gone now. Or I couldn't do anything about it because the law said they have to allow an annexation. It's not right. The big money men are coming in and taking over. I mean, between 201 and 202, 70 and 40 is just bizarre. I can't even. Thank you. Good luck to all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Morford. Catherine Schulte?
Hi there. My name is Catherine Schutte, S-H-U-T-T-E, for anyone that would like to Google that.
I apologize.
I am a
Schutte.
1991 graduate of Bethel. My son was also a 2011 class of Bethel. I want to make the point of the message that we are sending our young girls that are being told that they just have to accept this. We teach our children, and we are taught as women or as kids growing up, that we need to be aware of our surroundings, that we need to feel safe, we need to feel comfortable, and if we're in a situation where we don't feel comfortable, we have a right to speak up and get out of that. We're telling these young girls now that it doesn't matter. Your safety and your comfort doesn't matter. What you need to do is sit down and shut up so we can accommodate a very few other people, and that's not the message that these girls need. I'm going to keep this really short and sweet. Bethel has a long history of not protecting its female students. Bethel has a long history of its female students being preyed upon by people in this school, including teachers, and it being ignored and swept under the rug. It's time for that to change. In the 30 years since I graduated, girls weren't being protected when I was in school, and they're still not being protected, and it's up to you guys to make that change.
Thank you, Ms. Schutte, and I'm sorry for getting your name wrong. Donna Beam. Yeah, sure.
Okay, once again, for the third time, I am before the board with the same questions and no answers. I have emailed all of you several times, 9 times to be exact, and not one of you have, well, 3 of you have not even given me the respect of a return email. I have had a personal conversation with 2 of you and asked you why you are choosing this policy. You say it's the law, even though we have given you written facts as to what the law really is here in Ohio. Even though we collected over 1,300 signatures to walk it back. Even though we had over 200 here at the last board meeting, clearly someone has an agenda. Over the past 3 months, myself and many in the community have done our homework to educate ourselves on Title IX, given you the facts as to what the current law is in Ohio. A lot of people you're not taking that into consideration, and we've been through Title IX several times. So you really got to get into it and dig into it. For the life of me, I cannot understand why any of you would want a biological male to be in the bathroom with a biological female or vice versa. What we are here tonight to talk about, it's called privacy. Our expectations of privacy for persons of the opposite sex is so profound as it's to be found all across our laws, including in laws pertaining to our schools and in our courts, and decisions describing our personal privacy as to also a constitutional right. The violation of privacy is humiliating. Bathrooms and locker rooms are the only place we can go to undress and to use bathrooms outside of the presence of the opposite sex. People can dress or groom however they want, but I'll start that part over again. People can dress or groom however they want, but the clothing choices of a person of the opposite sex does not change or eliminate the other's right to privacy. In your own mission statement, and I quote, "I support the community and the support of the community is critical to our district." success, and it will be earned through effective, open, and honest communication. The events that have transpired over the past few months surrounding the handling of the Bethel restroom issue are nothing short of dishonest, wrong, and it's an embarrassment to the district. Your lack of respect for Bethel parents, community members, stakeholders of this district deserve better. You have proven the privacy and safety of all Bethel students lies entirely in the determination of myself and our community to defend it, and we will. So once again, I ask you to walk this back for the third time. I ask that 3 board members to resign because you 3 are choosing to keep this policy in place. It is not the law in the state of Ohio. You do not represent our community values. You no longer have the respect and the trust of many in the community. You do not have the privacy and the safety in place for all Bethel students. We can and must respect everyone without violating the privacy of anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Beam. Jamie Spangler?
Good evening, and thank you for this time to speak. My name is Jamie Spangler. I want to talk about the decision that was made and implemented in January regarding students being allowed to use the restroom of the sex they identify with, as opposed to their biological sex. This decision is alarming to me and affects the safety and health of my kids. It is a violation of their privacy and makes them extremely uncomfortable. I'm opposed to this decision and ask you to walk this decision back. I have a son and a daughter at Bethel who both aren't comfortable using restrooms under the newly adopted policy of the school board. Let me address the safety concern. It has been stated by board members and or the superintendent that there aren't enough staff members to monitor the restrooms as it is. The teachers and staff are already working at max capacity with lack of substitute teachers, teachers being out sick, COVID, teachers forgoing lesson planning period to teach another class, etc. For the board to try and levy yet another requirement on them to monitor the restrooms isn't a realistic expectation, nor feasible for them either. Also, the SRO at Bethel is one person. She can't physically monitor all restrooms at all times. Health concern. My daughter now does not use a restroom until she gets home because she feels it's humiliating, violates her privacy, and is not safe for her to use a restroom. It's not healthy for her to hold it all day and wait until she gets home to relieve herself. A privacy issue. When my daughter and any of our students are using a restroom, they are in a very vulnerable position physically, and now she does not feel she has the privacy to do so. The idea that when my son uses a restroom, there could be a biological girl walk in and see his body parts is also a violation of his privacy. The school board and superintendent, with you making the decision in the dark that goes against protocol, procedure, and law is not acceptable. There was never a vote taken by the board in turning away from what had been the practical, unwritten restroom policy of the district for years. By making this new decision, you are not discriminating against my kids. My kids' rights and the rights of Bethel students don't end where another student's rights begin. What about the right to their privacy? What about the right for them to feel safe at school? I was not informed of this by the school that the restroom policy decision had changed until my daughter called me upset. I found out after the decision was made and implemented. Why did I have to find out such an important decision was made for my teenage daughter? Why did I have to research and read about this in the news? Where's the partnership with the school board and the Bethel parents and community members? We have and continue to reach out to you, and we have proposed alternative solutions to decisions that you face. Why are we being ignored instead of working together with us? This decision you made directly impacts our children. To date, 18 states and the District of Columbia have enacted laws and statutory language and or agency regulations prohibiting discrimination in education on the basis of gender identity. Ohio is not one of them. The lack of transparency, lack of regard for the process in which a policy has to be voted on according to Ohio state law, the fact that the decision was done with no parent or community involvement is inexcusable. You are making decisions that directly affect the safety, well-being, and health of my children and Bethel students. Alternative solutions. I propose that instead of this policy, that the school board allow those children who identify as transgender to use a private staff or nurse restroom. This is logical given the majority of the children at Bethel use the restroom of their biological sex. This is also reasonable to accommodate the majority of students, as opposed to accommodating a handful of students while disrupting the majority of the students. To summarize, I'm asking the board to walk back this decision. Our children should not feel their privacy to be violated, their safety compromised, there is a risk to their health or an increase in anxiety because they are now forced to use a restroom with someone of the opposite biological sex. Being a kid is hard enough. Why are you adding yet another burden to them? Since this is not required by Ohio state law, then why would you make such a decision in secret and not even ask the community? Or now that the community has assertively voiced what we want for the safety of our kids, why will you not humble yourselves, listen to us, and walk this policy back? One reason we've been given for this decision was that the price of litigation is too costly for the school. I'm here to tell you that you can't put a price tag on the safety, health, privacy, and well-being of our children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Spangler. Jackie Leskowicz?
I am here again to convey my concerns about allowing males and females to use restrooms and locker rooms of the opposite sex, especially without any written policies. But first, I want to be very clear that I believe all students have a right to attend school free of discrimination, bullying, and harassment. If a boy wants to wear a dress or a girl wants a flat top, they have that right. Those individual choices have no effect on my children's safety. Furthermore, I am not saying transgender females will commit rape because you allow them to use a girl's restroom. My fear is how much easier it will be for a predator or a prankster to enter a restroom or a locker room and sexually assault a child because you refuse to set boundaries and write policies. Please do not twist what I just said into saying I think Bethel is filled with predators. This free-for-all stance you have taken means anyone from any school district visiting our school for any type of event has the same restroom privileges you have granted Bethel's transgender students. With that said, how would any biological girl using the restroom or locker room know whether a boy or man entering the restroom is a transgender female who just didn't dress feminine that day versus a male wanting to use a girl's restroom for sexual gratification? And let's not forget, this applies to the elementary building and children as well. So now we have 5-year-old girls sharing a restroom with males as old as 18. We shouldn't ignore the issues this brings for the boys as well. Boys are not comfortable having a female see them standing at the urinal, and there is a much greater chance they could be falsely accused of some sort of sexual assault. Again, nothing states a transgender male must dress like a boy, so any female could walk into the boys' restroom. All it would take is for a girl who is mad at a boy over a breakup to see revenge by fabricating a story. We would all be naive to think any accused boy would be treated innocent until proven guilty. Some have argued they shared restrooms with the opposite sex at some point in their adult lifetime, maybe at a concert to avoid long lines for the women's room, or maybe at Walmart without knowledge a biological man is in the next stall. Therefore, they ask, so what's the big deal? The difference here is this is a school filled with young children and adolescents. We are talking about children who have the right to privacy and to feel safe at school. While it is bad enough allowing the opposite sex in any restroom, it is 100 times worse allowing this commingling in the locker rooms. It is simply wrong, and I fear for any student to be naked in front of the opposite sex or to see private parts of the opposite sex at any age and any time during school or school events. I am very disappointed you have dismissed so many valid concerns parents have expressed to you. The Department of Education Civil Rights Data Collection reported 14,938 documented incidents of sexual violence in K through 12 during the 17-18 school year. This is a staggering 50% increase from 2015. Furthermore, we know many assaults go unreported, so we really do not know how high this number truly is. But based on this statistic, I do not feel we are over-exaggerating the potential risk of sexual incidents. All of this division within the school district, name-calling, anger, frustration, petitions, etc., could have been avoided if you had just acknowledged the concerns of both sides, then develop a solution that works for everyone. When parents were scared for their children's safety of school shootings, you eased their minds by installing preventative measures such as Mylar on the entrance doors, hiring an SRO, locking the doors, and requiring photo ID for entrance. When the school's strategic plan had to be written, you sought input from students, faculty and staff, parents, and the local community to ensure everyone played a part in how the school will educate our children to become productive citizens of society. But now when parents come to you with the sincere fears for their children's safety and fighting for their children's rights, a school administrator used the internet to label them as a circus. This circus consists of the same people you collected information from to develop Bethel's strategic plan. If you feel so strongly that students have the right to choose which restroom they use, then why are you afraid to implement a policy to address restroom usage? The middle school handbook addresses how many times a day and per week a student can be excused to use the restroom. Why not add who can use the restroom? You argue Title IX mandates transgenders be allowed to use the bathroom of the sex they associate with. Therefore, we do not need a policy because the law covers it. The law covers sexual harassment and discrimination, yet we have policies for that. Bethel follows the CDC's COVID guidelines, but you wrote and implemented a policy last January that provides mask guidance. Your rationale seems to contradict your actions on when a policy is justified. My plea has not changed from last month. Please walk back the current stance on allowing males to use female restrooms or locker rooms and vice versa. Then let's work together as a community to develop a solution together that provides parents assurance we have done our best
Sorry, Ms.
to
Leskowicz,
mitigate
that's
the
your time,
risk
please.
of sexual assaults, harassment, bullying,
That's your time.
discrimination for all Bethel students.
Sorry, Ms. Leskowicz. Thank you, Mrs. Leskowicz. Mandy Seyfried.
I'm reading for Mandy. She had to leave. So, first, I keep hearing that the trans community is nice. Nobody's arguing that fact. It's not about being nice, it's about safety. I also keep hearing about the trans students deserve to learn in a safe environment, deserve to use the bathroom safely. Does the 1,700 other students not matter? There are times in our lives that people who abuse authority attempt to move boundaries or take away something to create a new normal for the people around them. There are members of the board and school administration who feel it is within their power to remove boundaries and create a new normal for our students, or for our school and our children. You as a board have taken the safety from our children. You have removed their right to privacy. You have given them a false sense of security that can be shattered in an instant. The parents, grandparents, and many other members of this community are here to defend our children and take back what you have ripped away from them, their safety. We are here to ensure those safety and privacy boundaries are given back to our children. Above anything, our children's safety and privacy are our top concerns. If they are not safe, they cannot be taught. Members of this board and administration have failed our students and no longer deserve to make decisions concerning our students here at Bethel. Since January 10th, our community has been coming together to do the job our board was elected to do. Your mission statement says you will provide, and I'm paraphrasing, a safe, secure setting while showcasing community values. Do you as a board feel you have done this? I don't expect an actual answer because you still have not answered my safety concerns from January 10th. This is your mission statement, yet I have witnessed 3 of you continue to neglect the safety and privacy of all students in this district. This community has made clear to you what our values are over the past 3 months, but you are choosing to ignore them. Additionally, number 3 on your belief statement is the support of the community is critical to our district's success and will be earned through effective, open, and honest communication. You have not been open, you have not been honest, and you no longer have the support of this community. Everyone deserves privacy and safety, yet our students are being given none. At this point, you may as well do what you do best and just copy what Mara Loma Elementary in California did and remove the gender signs from the restrooms. Without a written policy or even a written procedure in the student handbook, that is essentially what you've done anyways. I would also like to know what your policy will be for overnight trips and camps. Do you have one? Have you even thought that far ahead, or just powering through because it's what you want and you don't care about the pesky details that keep our children safe? What are the plans for the partitions mentioned in the FAQ? Are there really any, or was that just to get us off your back? There have been more than enough times to get quotes and start working on steps towards safety and privacy measures in our school facilities if you insist on sticking to your extremely loose interpretation of our women's rights laws. All of these things, overnight stays, privacy measures, co-ed sports teams, consequences for not following the approval process to use different restrooms, should have been considered and implemented before you decided to interpret our policies differently. You have written a policy and a procedure for use of the school credit card, but not for student safety in using opposite sex restrooms. That tells me you're more worried about the almighty dollar than you are our children. As a board, you may not have done your research before insisting this policy be interpreted differently. However, the community has presented multiple times that these changes are not necessary. Accommodations were made, which is what is required of you. The federal law has not changed. Neola said Ohio has not enacted any laws or regulations on the basis of gender identity. This decision is on you and you alone. So you and you alone will be held responsible in the event of a tragic assault on any of the students in this school. And no, that is not implying that I'm worried about a transgender student assaulting my child. I'm worried just for that student as I am my own child's safety. I blame you for allowing this unsafe environment at Bethel, and you will be responsible if something happens. You know there is nothing legally binding you to this decision, but there you sit. I will leave you with a quote from Maya Angelou: do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. You now know better. We have done the work for you.
That's your time, please.
If you refuse to step
That's
up
your
and
time,
do better,
please.
then step down.
I'm sorry, that's your time,
The
please.
respect of this
We
community.
have several other people to get through, please. What was her name? Okay. Next, we have Bronwyn Crowley.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I would like to acknowledge that Nicholas is live streaming because I did email all of you except you, Tina, this morning to ask that the audio be corrected for tonight so we didn't have a repeat of last month. But here we are. Anyway, thank you, Nicholas, for live streaming so everyone can see it. When using the women's restroom at Meijer recently, I heard a knock and then a man's voice call out to see if anyone was in the room. I responded, "Just a minute," and he waited outside the room for me to finish up. Wash my hands and exit. I thanked him as I was leaving, and he gave me a kind smile in return. I told him it was all clear. He put up the close sign and he went in to do his job. He respected my privacy as a woman. As a man, he knew that walking into the women's room while I, or any other biological woman, was in there would be uncomfortable for all of us. He provided for my modesty. Now, he wasn't coming in there to hurt me. He simply had a job to do, and he needed to enter the room. But he made sure no women were around first. Even though his motives were pure, it was still a line he did not cross. Why is this relevant? Because your male janitorial staff would do something similar on the Bethel campus. A male custodian would not just walk into the girls' room unannounced to do his job. Why? Because it would not provide for the privacy and the modesty of any biological female students in there at the time. He would ensure the room was empty, put up a sign to tell girls not to come in, and do his job in private. When you adopted your restroom policy earlier this year, I sat down with my daughter and I explained to her what it means to be transgender. I then asked her how she would know that any biological male in the women's room with her at school had been approved to be in there. How would she know she was safe? Her response, "Well, I guess I wouldn't." And she's right. She wouldn't know. How could she? And why is this burden being placed on her and hundreds of others? It's because you, as the board and administration of the school, have failed her. Your policy has the potential to desensitize children to potential danger. While I do not believe a transgender student causes any more risk to her than any other biological male in the girls' restroom, the fact still exists that restrooms are divided according to biological sex for a reason. They are divided in the military. They are divided in prisons. They are divided in malls, restaurants, and shopping centers. They are divided in offices all across the country. Again, this is not about transgender students, but bathrooms and locker rooms are the only places we can go to undress or use facilities outside of the presence of the people of an opposite biological sex. Biological sex is the only reason for separate facilities like locker rooms and bathrooms in the first place. You are training children to ignore their fight or flight instinct. You are instilling in them that what they once saw as a potential danger is now okay. It isn't. How will they know that this same situation in a different space could be unsafe when you are training them here to just go along to get along? The answer? They absolutely won't. Women's privacy rights do not depend on what a man believes about anything. Women's privacy rights do not cease existing or suddenly spring into existence solely based on what a man believes about his gender identity. People are free to believe whatever they want about the nature of gender and express themselves on those beliefs within reasonable limits. But their beliefs cannot change or eliminate another person's right to privacy and modesty. You have heard from your own Neola rep that you are not legally obligated to commingle sexes in your restrooms and locker rooms. The Ohio Attorney General, Dave Yost, is currently working with 19 other state attorney generals to prevent Biden from reinstating policy that Trump overturned regarding federal overreach and changing wording surrounding Title IX to include gender identity. This has not been settled at a federal level, and Ohio has no law in place to enforce your policy. Walk back what you have enacted. 3 of you are also being asked to resign your positions. You have undermined the faith and and trust of the community who voted you onto this board. I have personally spoken to hundreds of Bethel residents over the last few weeks. They are outraged at what you have done in darkness. We will have the numbers to remove you, but you can save us the time and trouble by removing yourselves. Either way, you need to go. You no longer speak for your electorate. And if anyone here tonight who lives in the district would like to sign the petition to remove 3 of them, I'll be out in the lobby by the tables after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Crowley. I missed a few minutes ago, we passed the 1 hour mark that we allow public comments, so the board needs to take a vote. I had said thank you, Mrs. Crowley, and I just noticed I passed the time a little bit ago where we passed our 1 hour for public comments, so the board needs to take a vote or decide how much longer we're going to permit. I have about 10 more slips, which would be about 50 minutes more. Does the board agree to continue for the entire 50 minutes? Or so, however long it takes to get through those. Just want to be sure everybody's okay. Mrs. Sebastian, you okay? No. Mrs. Donahue said okay. Okay, so should we just do we have a motion to make a vote on on extending the time for however long it takes to get through the next 10 slips? Bathroom, restroom, bathroom, annexations. Resident, no idea. I think resident, not a resident. Resident, don't know, not a resident. But most are a transgender policy. Got 1 on annexation, 9 on transgender and restroom. So, what do we think? So I'm going to repeat what Mrs. Fran said. She would like to make a motion to extend the time to allow everyone who's put in a slip to speak. Is there a second? Mrs. Donahue has seconded. Mrs. Hageman, when you call the vote, please. Yes.
Donahue? Yes.
Yes.
Sebastian? Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 5-0 to allow all people who put in a slip to go ahead and speak. So hopefully it won't take the whole 50 minutes, but you never know. And we're currently at 10:11 p.m. Okay, next up to speak is Jim Crowley.
Thank you for the chance to speak. My wife and I are trying to raise a preteen daughter in a toxic culture. I'm here to speak for her. We're committed to, yet sometimes exhausted by, the effort to guide our little girl to become a confident, courageous, and humble young woman, trying to keep her safe, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. This culture has succeeded in hypersexualizing our children at every turn. This has robbed many of them of innocence and the chance to be a kid. We fight the battle of what she sees on TV, what she hears in music lyrics, where she goes, and who she spends time with daily. We've worked very hard to instill in her a sense of self-worth that is not tied to how she looks, what she wears, and what others, especially the opposite sex, think of her. Ever since she was in 2nd or 3rd grade, we have had to hunt to find school clothes or swimsuits that weren't designed to be sexy. She has no online access through her phone, and we only allow access to the internet in public areas of the house. I tell my girl that no one gets to mistreat her or disrespect her. I tell her that she doesn't owe a boyfriend or anybody else anything that makes her uncomfortable. I let her know that her body is her own, that her nakedness and her sexuality is a gift from God to be reserved for and enjoyed within the bounds of marriage. All this effort and planning and forethought, and this board, casually and secretly decides to rob her of the basic right to safety, privacy, and modesty in the most vulnerable situations, bathrooms and locker rooms. Society bombards our kids, especially girls, with the idea that they have to be sexy, that their value is to be found in how they are perceived by men, that sex is no big deal, everyone's doing it, and the risk of being promiscuous or dressing like you are limited. We fight it every day, and this school is supposed to help us fight. What message are you sending to my little girl instead? That she doesn't have the right to privacy? She doesn't have the right to keep her nakedness from people of the opposite sex? That to even strive for privacy and modesty, she's either a bigot or at least closed-minded? Are you kidding? This stance is supposedly covered under the school's anti-harassment policy. So are you telling me that my little girl denying members of the opposite sex access to view her naked body is harassment? If today she doesn't have the right to keep men from looking at her naked body, what is next? Will she have the right to keep them from touching it, forcing her into sex acts? This is not a political issue drawn along party lines, as some would have you believe. This is basic decency that has been accepted for thousands of years. Even Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, far left feminist advocate, understood this when she penned the majority opinion regarding Virginia Military Institute to admit women. She stipulated that VMI would need to, quote, afford members of each sex privacy from the other sex in living arrangements, end quote. Why? As she wrote in an op-ed at the Washington Post while she was a law professor at Columbia, I quote, separate places to disrobe, sleep, perform personal body functions are permitted, in some situations required, by regard for individual privacy. Individual privacy, a right of constitutional dimension, is appropriately harmonized with the equality principle. Privacy and equality are not mutually exclusive. In fact, upholding the former is essential to preserving the latter, especially for women. Women still face unique social challenges. Taking away a woman's privacy from the male form and the male gaze directly by forcing them to share spaces with males is a step backwards in the fight for equality. I would ask this board change the stance back to the original policy or resign your position. You're supposed to represent the constituents that put you here, and this does not reflect our values at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Kelly Sodders, I believe I saw leave. And Amy Dills, I think I saw leave. Audrey Babb.
Okay, so first, it is my understanding that the teachers and staff have been directed not to get involved in the restroom issue. At the February 14th board meeting, chemistry teacher Stormy Maliski spoke out in favor of the policy. When was she reprimanded and what was her punishment is what I would like to know. Many kids may not even be aware of the restroom issue at all. I imagine a good portion of parents aren't either. Just because students are not coming to the superintendent or principals does not mean that they are fine with the opposite sex in restrooms, locker rooms, alongside them. Most would never speak up, from shyness, awkwardness, being unaware, fear of unacceptance, or persecution. They may even be afraid of repercussions. However, I am not. Part of my job as a parent is to protect my child. When I send my child here for the day, I place her in your care with the hope that she will not be faced with certain adult situations. I don't allow her to view R-rated movies, partly because they may contain nudity. Why would or should I be okay with her being alone, unsupervised, in a state of undress with a biological male present? Also, in a state of undress. Mr. Firks, you may have deemed yourself a professional in the field of psychology and the counseling of transgender students to determine the legitimacy and commitment to transgender status. However, I know nothing about this biological male you want to give permission to be alongside my daughter while she is in a bathroom stall with pants and undergarments around her ankles. K through 12 children should not be faced with these issues on a daily basis. School presents enough pressure as it is. There is an unwritten basic human right to use the restroom and undress in a private locker room with your own biological gender, and then there is special privilege of expecting to use any gendered facility you choose. My child's rights do not end where another child's begins. Your child's mental health and anxiety are not more important than my child's or anyone else's at this school. I'm not sure how I would react if a biological male entered while I was undressing. How can you expect these young people to process all of this? None of this belongs in schools. The human brain does not finish developing until the age of 25. A minor can't make choices or decisions on many subjects. They can't foresee the long-term consequences of their choices. Parents do what is in the best interest of their children. We look out for them, stand up for them. Mr. Firks, for you to say no kids have come to you with opinions is truly irrelevant. I choose what's best for my child as a parent. You are an educator, and my daughter's education does not include learning how to deal with a biological male in the restroom or locker room. People want to feel kids are more resilient these days, probably by the same adults in therapy for all of their issues that they haven't resolved from their childhood that they've been carrying around since childhood. Kids are not more resilient. They are dealing with so much more than we did. Just the internet alone has changed kids. Kids are rarely asked or don't know how to express their feelings. Transgenders will often still be sexually attracted to the opposite of their biological sex. Where does this leave my daughter if she finds herself in a compromised situation in a state of undress
with a teenage biological male with raging teenage hormones that finds himself attracted to her. By the therapist who specializes in transgenders statement from the last board meeting, these kids are often suicidal and homicidal. You think it's okay to put our children in this type of unmonitored situation. I have no faith in your ability to keep my child safe. And just as a side note, I used the restroom that was down this hallway. The door of the stall wouldn't close, much less lock. So there were no privacy, zero privacy there if anyone had walked in.
Thank you, Mrs. Babb. Mr. Ferks, I know we've had some high school vandalism issues with that restroom. We have Mr. Bird take a look at that one in the morning for right away. Thank you. I haven't been in that restroom today at all. I haven't been in that restroom in weeks, but we can take a look at that one. Alex Ryan?
So my name is Alex Ryan. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I am the chair of Glisson Central Ohio, which supports all students in the K through 12 schools. I just want to say thank you. And just, it's a long day. It is 10:30. I teach in school, and I have to teach tomorrow. And there's a lot of folks here who I believe have never been in a classroom before. And that is sassy, but I want to say that people are parents, and that's great because I'm not a parent. But I know what kids are like inside the school. And I work with elementary schoolers, and they're fine. They all call me Mix Ryan. They all have no issues. I promise your kids will be fine as well. So Bethel Local Schools has the B statements. Be kind, be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. I believe that letting trans students, or just students in general, use the bathroom is following all 4 of those guidelines. By being kind to others, we are making sure that everyone is safe. In the high school handbook on page 20, it says the code attempts to protect individual rights by ensuring each student has the right to an education and the commensurate responsibility not to interfere with or threaten the education of others by personal actions. Using the bathroom is a personal action. I promise you, kids just want to go in and pee. I mean, some of them want to mess around, but those are actions that can be used as consequences. We're not just letting anyone into bathrooms. By a statement, I was talking to one of the trans students at this meeting who should not have been here because God bless their hearts. What a hard thing to hear from adults. Only out trans people can go into the bathrooms, and that's by their principal. Gives them an okay to be in the bathroom. Not just any random person can just go into the bathroom. As another note, adults are not allowed in the same restrooms as kids. High schoolers shouldn't even be in the elementary schoolers. That's an issue in itself. And it's true. As well, if an adult is in the bathroom using the same restroom, there are staff restrooms. I promise guests can use them. I want to make sure that that no one also said homicidal. Kids are suicidal, not homicidal. No one's being murdered, promise you that. And no one has an agenda. We just want to make sure that kids can pee. And a lot of you mentioned that, like, your kid is coming all the way home, having UTIs, not being able to use the bathroom. That's the same thing for our trans kids. Like, we're on the same playing field. We're making sure that women are safe, because if boys who identify as boys, not trans women, if boys who identify as boys go into the bathroom and mess with your girls, that is an issue. They can't just say they're trans because they'd have to be out. So there are already steps in place for kids to out themselves to use the bathroom. So that's not saying that there are kids who aren't out using the bathroom, because they're not trying to do that. And just as a reminder that our kids matter, all of the kids. And I know that you think that this is a small minority, but I see kids in elementary school who are transitioning.
And it's amazing. It is amazing. And I want you to be like, oh, they must be confused. They're not. And even if they are, the worst thing that we have done to them as a supportive adult is support them. Because guess what? Parents who don't support kids, grown-ups who don't support kids, they don't end up with straight kids. They end up with dead kids. They end up with dead kids. The rate of suicide is so high. The rate of murder, the trans women are being murdered by straight people and cis people. So that's also a real thing. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We don't want anyone to be harmed in the bathroom. I got you. I don't want to be harmed in the bathroom either. So let's work together to make sure that everyone has the policy of I go into the bathroom to pee and then I come out. I don't go around to play in there. That's a thing that as teachers we can teach the kids. You go into the bathroom, you go pee. This person goes to the bathroom, they go pee. And then we can trust them to use the bathroom by themselves. That's a privilege. They can all use the bathroom. And elementary schoolers, they don't go to the bathroom by themselves anyway. We all go as a group. We go walk in, one person in, one person in. I promise, they're gonna be fine. I know we're scared. We're gonna get through this together, but we have to let people pee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Is it Roberta Ullinger? Do I have that right?
My name is Roberta Ullinger.
Ullinger, thank you.
And I am not local. I am from Kent, Ohio. I drove 3 hours to be here primarily to tell the students here that they are loved, that they have value, that they are worthy, and that it breaks my heart that they have to listen to some of the hateful messages that people have been spewing last month and this month. When the gentleman was reading to you the Bible verses, I'd like to add to that. Look at Isaiah 56 and Acts 8. The one woman that was here that was a counselor that was talking about some of the consequences, the obscenely high suicide rates amongst transgender people, the obscenely high homeless rates amongst transgender kids. That's bad fruit. You can read about bad fruit in Matthew 7. And lastly, I'm not going to take up too much time. Lastly, I would like to say thank you to the board. I was looking earlier at the frequently asked questions page on your Facebook or on your website, and it seems very well thought out. The policy that has been in place for quite a long time seems to be pretty level-headed and seems to be well thought out and fair. And I'd just like to thank you for that. And again, please relay to the students my feelings and express to them that they do have value and that they are worthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ullinger. Siobhan Boyd Nelson.
Good evening. My name is Siobhan Boyd Nelson. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I serve as the Deputy Director at Equality Ohio Education Fund. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening, attend the meeting, and to share my thoughts with you. First, I'd like to reference the superintendent's letter on the website. Actually, it's in the handbook. And one of the statements in there is that you want the students to take pride in themselves and in their school. And I think that that is something that this entire board wants and that everybody wants for these students. We want students that have the ability to take pride in themselves and in their schools. I'd also like to reference the beliefs of this school board. One of your goals is a safe learning environment where students exercise respect and responsibility. You also believe that education is a lifelong process. We at Equality Ohio also believe that education is a lifelong process, and that includes education about ourselves and about one another and the people that we share this planet with and share our communities with. At Equality Ohio, we believe that many of the questions, many of the fears that I've heard here tonight, there's been a lot of talk of safety. I too am a mother of a teenage son who's actually in college. I've heard that and I understand it. And at Equality Ohio, we want to address those fears. We want to address the questions that people have about LGBTQ community members. What does it mean for a trans student to use a restroom that aligns with their gender identity? What are the harms if that student isn't given access to that restroom? What do we know to be true about trans students who are supported by their schools and by the adults in their lives? That information is out there and we would love to provide it to you. In your board member job description that you were discussing earlier, you mentioned that it is the duty of a board member to support equality, diversity, and inclusion, and to comply with all legal statutes. There's been a lot of discussion about what the law is here in Ohio. It is true that unfortunately, Ohio is one of the 20-something states in this country that does not protect people on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression in the areas of housing, public accommodation, and employment. But even if we had that law, which we think that we should and we've been fighting for a number of years, that law would not affect the work of this body, would not affect our schools. Instead, what we have is federal law. In fact, we have federal law from the 6th District. The 6th District is the federal district that actually governs the state of Ohio with other states. And laws, cases from Ohio, from the Southern and Northern District of Ohio in the federal courts have said that this school and all schools are required to accommodate trans students and make sure that they're not coming home with UTIs and not using the restroom every day. And they do have an access to a restroom and are safe in the school building along with every other student. We want to provide an opportunity to discuss the realities of the law. We want to get past the fear that is gripping so many of us in the room. Because when we talk to one another, when we get to know one another, when we really understand and see each other as individuals, as humans, as the neighbors that God has called each other to love, then we can get past that fear. We can gather a sense of safety as a community, and we can come together to support the most marginalized young people in this school. And finally, I would just to say that as a Black woman, it is quite disturbing to sit in this room and to hear people say that they want to live in a community where majority rules. And I'd just like people to take a moment to think about what our community, what our society would be like for everyone in this room if we still lived in a society where majority ruled and no one stood up to advocate for the most marginalized, traumatized, and vulnerable among us. And that's exactly who our trans students are. Thank you for your policies. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for the hard work that you are doing.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn Nelson. Ellen Stevenson.
Hi, I'm Ellen, been a member of this community for 30 plus years. I have a child with special needs that spent most of his time at another school, came back to get him to graduate, walked into the counselor's office, and she didn't have a clue who my son was, or that he was an IEP and that probably senior government wasn't going to work for him. So I think we need to get to know our kids. But one of the things I want to go back to is I was here last month I walked in the door, people everywhere, and I knew that I needed to fill out a piece of paper in order to talk at the meeting, but nobody seemed to know where that piece of paper was. Clue number one, the public wasn't welcome. I walked in, and there were about 40 chairs set up, mass chaos, because you guys were trying to set up enough chairs for everybody. Okay, that kind of looked like you weren't really expecting us to be here, and you weren't really sure you wanted us here. But one of the main things that hit me was when I looked at that stage, and the three of you were so close that if you'd have just gone just an inch closer, you'd have been inside of each other. While the other two board members were down at this end about as far away as they could be, which gave the illusion, the visual, that you didn't want to get along, and that bothers me. That is huge. You are our Board of Education. Your job is to work together for the betterment of this school and for the students. And it was very obvious that there was a big chasm between the two, and it broke my heart. And I'm glad that we've got things a little bit better tonight. I do appreciate that you guys are a little more intermingled tonight. I do appreciate that the sound system is working better, and I do ask that when we do the community forum, because I do encourage it, because I encourage both sides to be able to speak, and both sides need to be keeping their ears and eyes open for what's going on. I feel very strongly that the students that are in the elementary and even into the middle school and kids in the high school need to be protected from each other. And I know I'm not the only one. I know there's staff that feel the same way. I have a child that has struggled with his identity, and he looks at me and he's like, "Mom, I know you love me." And I'm like, "Yeah, I absolutely do." But when he heard about the bathroom policy, I'm surprised you guys didn't hear him all over the community. He was very upset that his younger sister could possibly be subjected to that. We are not saying, I am not against, as I said, I've got LGBTQ. I mean, I've got friends that have been in the community. I have friends who have children in that community, and I still love them 100%. But I want to make sure that my daughter and your daughters and sons are all kept safe. One girl walks into a boys' restroom. All she has to do is say he did something. There doesn't even have to be proof. And unfortunately, that young man's life and his reputation is going to be scarred. So I just want you to think about that. And I just want you to make sure that you can keep the kids at this school safe. We can't expect one resource officer to do it. I just think we all need to work together on that. And as I said, and I encourage transparency, because that this was talked about for several months before the community was made aware, put those of you on the board in a bad light. I appreciate your taking the time to listen to us. No, I want Bethel to be the best, okay? Be the best bees we can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Terry Isaacs?
Hi. Thank you for giving me this time. I was going to address this later on in my statement, but given what has, you guys seen transpired, I think we can see where the hate, the labels, and the name calls come from on this issue. If you oppose it, then all of a sudden you are their mortal enemy, and the name calling starts. Exhibit A. So I thought that we could agree in this room on one thing, that all of us should be here because not only do we care about the safety of our child, but every child that goes to Bethel. Clearly that's not the case. As a parent, we act in our child's best interest. We're their advocates, their protectors, their caretakers, their mouthpiece until they're old enough, mature enough to do those things for themselves. Which brings me to my first question. What kind of parent or so-called advocate would want to put a fragile child in a potential situation where they could be bullied, assaulted, name-called, made feel less than, intentionally? Isn't that exactly what your bathroom and locker room policy does? Let's face it, some kids are just cruel. They are. They act out of peer pressure, immaturity, trying to be cool, whatever the reason is. And shame on all of you or anyone that would ever want to put a child to potentially go through that. Accommodations have been made. Why would, for the life of me, I cannot figure out why you would not want your child to be in a private bathroom where there's some adult supervision. There's no chance of that happening. But no, that accommodation's not, that's not good enough. There's going to be no whispers or laughing or pointing. If that is okay at all in anyone, any parent, you're not your child's advocate. You're not your child's protector. You're your child's abuser. Clearly, you are willing to sacrifice your child's mental health for a cause to get a policy passed. Not okay. Not even remotely okay. Now, as a parent of a child that's been abused, I'm here to tell you, once that switch has been flipped, there ain't no turning it off. There ain't no, when they get out of high school, it gets better. It's with them forever. It changes who they are. And that's forever. And don't act like things don't go on in these bathrooms. Because I had a child here in 2011 that was physically assaulted in the bathroom right here at Bethel Local Schools. Check your records. There was a big old to-do over it. So it happens, okay? Let's not be blinded and act like it doesn't. It absolutely does. So instead of putting more safety measures in place to curb the stuff that's already going on in the bathrooms, we're going to now want to remove some of these and let anyone go to the bathroom with how they feel. Also, for school counselors and some teachers that will remain nameless, you don't have the qualifications to counsel these children, whether they be transgender, gay, bisexual, sexually abused, emotionally abused. Please stop. It's above your pay grade. Sitting in a session for 1 hour, and talking to these children about how they feel is not living it. I lived it. And for the woman that was here last month that said she mothered these children, I'd like to get her name, because as I went back and I went through the grand jury testimony and the police records and the trial, and I couldn't figure out where she was. Nobody, her name wasn't on the list, because it was just mine advocating for my son and what had happened to him. Okay? So I would believe she owes myself and everyone, every parent in this room, an apology, because she wasn't there when I signed my son into the psych ward on suicide watch. She wasn't there. I did that. One of the main rules of parenting is you don't have kids deal with adult issues. Yet you want to force these situations on these children that they don't have the maturity or understanding to do. This is a K through 12 school. It is inappropriate to have a billboard in the hallway where any child of any age can see it talking about insects engaging in gay sex. And the fact that I have to tell you that is appalling. Why is it we have laws stating when a child can...
I'm sorry, Ms. Isaacs, that's your time. Thank you, Ms. Isaacs. Ryan, is it Lastutter? I'm sure it's wrong. Was it? What was it again?
Lastutter.
Lastutter. Thank you.
Deep breath. I'm there for something else. I've never done this, so am I allowed to ask you guys questions, or is it just, do I just...
You just have to direct comments to me, sir. I'm sorry.
No worries. I'm here about the annexation. Switch it up a little bit. I guess, is there I've been to a couple meetings. I've been to the New Carlisle meeting. I'm a township resident.
Sure.
I've got a 5-year-old that'll be starting in kindergarten next year. I've got nieces that go here.
Awesome.
I guess it's kind of a playing chase a little bit. New Carlisle sent me to Bethel Township. Bethel Township suggested that I come here. One of the members of the school board was at the meeting last week as well.
Sure.
So I guess my question is there anything being done on the school side of things to potentially stop? I don't think we can stop the annexation, but is there anything that we can do to stop the kids from all these new homes from flooding our school that my daughter is about to start at next year, that my niece currently spends part of her day in one of those trailers back there? So I've gone to New Carlisle. They sent me to Bethel Township. Bethel Township sent me to you guys, and it's not your fault, but the frustration's starting to build a little bit because all of a sudden, if we don't do anything soon, we're not going to be able to do anything. Then all of a sudden, we're just going to have, 700-800 more homes here, another 1,800 kids, and that's just going to compound all the other issues that we've got going on. So I guess my question is there anything going on that the school board is planning on doing or addressing with the state to ask for rezoning for them to go to Tecumseh or Huber Heights, or are we just...
I mean, I can tell you, I can speak historically, right? I mean, I know that last month we just met with the township trustees and had a conversation. Historically, the position of the board has been that the residents of the district and the district territory, I guess you can call it, we welcome students of Bethel. That is the position of the board. We did pass a resolution when the annexation on along 40 and between 201 and 202 came up the last time. We passed a resolution asking that the county commissioners and so on look at infrastructure and to maybe do what they could to slow growth, as in whether they could do anything about the rate at which they allow permits for building to happen until, say, 40, 201, 202 could be better equipped to handle the traffic that was going to come should that annexation pass.
Yes.
So we would be probably looking, I imagine, on our next agenda, our next work session, to have a conversation about a similar resolution. Again, now that that second resolution on 40 has actually been filed, it is now time for us to consider that again. But it's our understanding as well that at New Carlisle, those annexations have not been filed officially. We know they're coming, but until they actually come, I don't think there's a lot we can do at that point.
I was trying to follow along with
So just historically.
So if I'm understanding, the Bethel School supports bringing all these more.
Well, I don't think anyone's saying that we are supporting and want all that growth that rapidly, because we understand the funding comes like 2 years after the student arrives, and that's obviously a difficult situation for us. However, to say we don't want your kids is also obviously a very difficult position for us to take.
Why?
Because this is Bethel, this is our territory, this is our district, this is our land, right?
My point is why is that difficult to say? I'm saying it. I don't want them.
I mean,
I'm sure.
Well, no, I understand.
And I say that with all due respect.
I understand.
Sure they're fantastic kids.
Sure.
But by the time all that minuscule tax revenue that we're going to get, New Carlisle is going to get most of it, comes in, my daughter is going to be in 5th grade in that trailer that my niece is in right now. You guys probably won't be up here, and somebody else will be dealing with it.
But if you think,
and it's I've only got 1 minute, so I want to get out what I want to say. My point is that there's a lot of residents that don't want this, and you represent the residents. Sure. You represent us.
Sure. Totally.
So to just make a blanket statement to say we want them because we're Bethel is just false. It's just not true.
Sure.
Because I guarantee most of these folks out here don't.
Again, speaking,
a lot of them out here I've seen at the other meetings.
To date, I'm speaking historically what the position has been. That's all I'm saying is historically. And I think historically the thought has been every time you give up land, at some point, eventually we would only have Bethel where the building is, right? Like at some point, at the rate annexation is coming, the district would be eaten away at a point to where there wouldn't be any district left, right? I think traditionally that was the thought, that at some point there'd be no Bethel left because the annexation is coming so rapidly, right? So that's my understanding of the historical position. I could be dead wrong.
I got you.
But that's
So I
my
guess that leads me
understanding.
Back to my original question, what are we doing from the school district, from the Board of
Yeah.
Education standpoint to at least look and say, hey, do we, yeah, I understand my time's up, but
Yeah,
you know.
and I interfered with his time, so I
What are we
I
doing
did.
to at least look at it to say, hey, is this the right thing, instead of just
Sure.
saying, historically, that's what we do, so
Yeah.
we're gonna let, we're
Yeah.
gonna let it come in. Because, I mean, come on.
And we'll put it on the agenda for the work session to try and have an actual discussion where it's not, this is the meeting where we try and like crank out the votes in the in the business, so we'll have a discussion.
And I appreciate it. I
Yeah,
appreciate
we'll do it
your
on the work
time,
session.
And thank
And
you. And
perhaps attend maybe the work session when we can have more dialogue.
I would be more than
That'd be
happy
great.
to.
That'd be great.
But we're on a shot clock.
Yes, 100%.
So,
100%.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I don't want to say it publicly, but
Okay, I hadn't heard that. Okay, that was our last paper. Thank you, Mr. Lostutter. Appreciate it. That was our last paper, so our next agenda item would be, moving on, possible executive session. Who has items for motion to go into executive session? Okay. Okay. No? Okay. So I'm hearing no items for executive session this evening from anyone? Okay. Mr. Ferks, no items? Okay. We have no reason for executive session this evening, so we move on to the next item, which is motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Mr. Elam has a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Ms. Franz, I'm sorry, Mrs. Franz beat you, I'm sorry. So motion to adjourn by Mr. Elam, seconded by Mrs. Franz. Can you call the roll, please, Mrs. Hageman?
Mrs. Sebastian? Yes. Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mr. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue? Yes. Mrs. Grant?
Okay, the motion to adjourn is 5-0. We're adjourned at 10:53 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. It really is truly appreciated. Thank you for your time. I know this was a late night.